Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all to this Defense and Aerospace Roundtable organized by Southern India Chamber of Commerce and Industry and SAS partners with the theme Aerospace Manufacturing in Tamil Nadu Roadmap to Self-Reliance. We'll start the formal session right now. Before that, may I ask the participants who are unmuted to kindly mute themselves so that we have a good ambiance this afternoon. I would now like to start the proceedings officially by requesting Mr. A.R.M. Arun, President, Southern India Chamber, and Chairman, Balingro Group, to deliver the welcome remarks, please. Mr. President.
Yes, thank you, Vinod. Thiru MC, Honorable Industries Minister, Government of Tamil Nadu, Air Marshal Shashikar Chowdhury, AVSM, VSM, Officer Commander of the Indian Air Force, Air Marshal M. Matheeswaran, former Chief Integrated Defence Staff, Mr. B. Ilangovan, Senior General Manager, TITCO, special invitees to today's event, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome Air Marshal Chowdhury, AVSM, VSM, Officer Commanding in Chief, Indian Air Force, to today's event, and we certainly appreciate him in addressing us. I welcome Air Marshal Retired Matheeswaran, former Chief Integrated Defence Staff, and Mr. B. Ilangovan, Senior General Manager, TITCO. We also appreciate the partnering with SICI in organizing this very important event today. I would also like to warmly welcome each of our participants this afternoon. While Thiru Sampath, our Honorable Industries Minister, could not join us today, we welcome his recording his comments and sharing his thoughts with us. To give you an introduction, I'd like to start off with recalling a historical moment in 1932, when Mr. J.R.D. Tata flew the first commercial flight in the history of Indian aviation. This plane lifted off from Karachi with Mr. Tata at the controls of a Pas Moth, while it carried 25 kg of 4 Anna airmail letters to be distributed within Bombay and other parts of India. When Mr. Tata landed on the Juhu mud flats, India's first air service was inaugurated. Mr. Tata later recalled in an interview, however, there was, quote, no radio, no navigational or landing guides of any kind. In fact, we did not even have an aerodrome in Bombay. We used a mud flat at Juhu. The sea was below what we called our airfield, and during the monsoon, the runway was below the sea, unquote. The second president of SICI, Mr. Jamal Mohammed Sahib, was in fact a close associate of Mr. J.R.D. Tata and played a critical role in the flight route to Madras. SICI welcomed the outstanding achievement of Mr. Tata. Mr. Jamal Mohammed Sahib also played his part in ensuring that even during the most difficult monsoon months, no mail from Madras or Bombay missed connection at Karachi, nor was the mail delivered late on any occasion at Madras. Coming to today, when we look at Tamil Nadu, with this interesting piece of information from our history, Tamil Nadu has grown to be one of the most advanced, industrially progressive, and competitive states in India. Tamil Nadu has a diversified industrial base, strong fundamentals, and above all, a well-educated and skilled population. The state is a leader and a pioneer in a number of crucial industrial sectors, such as automobiles and auto components, textiles, leather, information technology, and healthcare. Tamil Nadu has the largest number of factories and largest employment in industry amongst all states in India. In this context, it would make logical sense for this strategic state to look at the aerospace sector as the next growth engine. As you all are aware, India's aerospace and defense market is among the most attractive globally, and the government of Tamil Nadu is keen to leverage this advantage to promote investments in the sector. The Aerospace and Defense Policy 2019 of Tamilnadu also provides the needed incentives and measures to develop a strong domestic capability in defense. This is towards giving greater impetus for economic growth, skilled job creation, while also supporting growth of domestic manufacturers and MSMEs. The Tamil Nadu Industrial Policy 2021 to 2025, which was unveiled by the Chief Minister Edappadi K. Palanisamy recently, aims to achieve 4 key objectives, namely, number 1, attract investments worth over 10 lakh crore rupees. Number 2, achieve an annual growth rate of 15% in the manufacturing sector. Number 3, increase contribution of the manufacturing sector to 30% of the state economy by 2030 from the current 25% now. And number 4, to create 20 lakh jobs. This industrial policy provides a structured package of incentives for companies looking to invest more than 500 crore rupees in the state. While it offers 4 different subsidy models to investors, namely state GST reimbursement, fixed capital subsidy, flexible capital subsidy, and turnover subsidy, the policy also provides a bigger set of incentives in sunrise sectors. SICI believes that with the Industrial Policy 2021, Tamil Nadu will emerge the leader not only in traditional industries like automobiles, textiles, and industrial products, but a leader in the aerospace sector as well. When we look at the aerospace sector, according to the recent report from the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, SIPRI, India is the world's second largest arms importer. India accounts for 9.2% of global imports and is the 23rd biggest exporter with a minuscule 0.2% of the global share. This report goes on to state that India is the 3rd largest military spender in the world after the US and China. India's military spending grew 6.8% to $71.1 billion in 2019. India's defense forces are the 2nd largest in the world, and its defense budget is the 5th largest globally. In spite of all of this, our defense forces are short of almost all types of combat aerial platforms. The current chief of the air staff has reportedly been loud and clear about supporting indigenous manufacture of aircraft under Make in India, and has also asserted that there will be no import of aircraft in the foreseeable future. As a rough projection, it is expected that the Indian Air Force will need to induct about 450 new combat aircraft over the next 3 decades or so. In the field of UAVs, DRDO organizations such as the Aeronautical Development Establishment ADE, the National Aerospace Laboratory NAL, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited HAL, and Bharat Electronics Limited BEL have been working on projects which again offer numerous opportunities for our companies. Manufacturing for the aerospace sector is a complex exercise for a number of reasons. It is capital intensive, it has high technological requirements, and also has a prolonged gestation period. Apart from these, there are also the systemic challenges manufacturers face in terms of the supply chain itself. While the industry has certainly come a long way, it is still evolving to overcome the challenges it has traditionally faced, like cost of raw materials being high, the availability of skilled labor, technological requirements, and the procurement of parts from multiple manufacturers. In this context, the pandemic has certainly hit the aerospace sector badly. India was expected to add nearly 2,000 new aircrafts to its existing fleet by 2030. The industry-friendly MRO policy, low-cost air travel under the UDAN scheme, and a program to upgrade nearly 200 airports has been put in place. It was estimated that the MRO segment would have grown at 10% and generated $2.6 billion by the year 2021. I would like to quote Douglas Adams from the popular science fiction book, which later transitioned into a movie, called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. He says, quote, "Airspace is big. You just won't believe how vastly, hugely, mind-bogglingly big it is. I mean, you may think it is a long way down the road to the drugstore, but that's just peanuts to space." unquote. We hence believe that now is the time for India to rise to the challenge and be the leader in the opening up of the aerospace sector. I would like to share with you a few words about SICKI and our forays forward. In the connection of the aerospace industrial growth in our country, today's event is quite timely, and we commend the Air Force for being proactive in choosing to interact today with industry in this region. SICKI has always advocated for the indigenization of the defense and aerospace industry in our nation, with a specific focus on Tamilnadu. This has been through our various engagements and conferences with the defense forces. SICKI is committed to the establishment of the defense corridor in this state, and we strongly feel that industry in this region should not miss this unique opportunity to manufacture for and supply to the world's most profitable defense market. Chennai, which already possesses inherent in automobile manufacturing, this shift to defense manufacturing would certainly be the next logical step. SICKI hopes that this good beginning is sustained and regular interactions such as these are consistently organized. We would like to assure you that we would continue to engage with the defense forces and host similar interactions in the days to come. We commend all participants for their focus in this sector and assure you of our support in promoting defense manufacturing in Tamil Nadu. We hope to host the next interaction in a hybrid mode during June 2021. We certainly look forward to you joining us for this as well. I would like to take this opportunity to thank SAS partners for their support and helping release the knowledge report. With these few words, I would like to welcome each one of you once again and wish you all a fruitfully and intellectually enriching learning experience today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your interesting and insightful address. I would now like to request Air Marshal Shashika Chowdhury, AVSM, VSM, Air Officer Commanding in Chief, Indian Air Force, to address the participants. And as participants would be aware, this is a series of events that the Southern India Chamber has been organizing, beginning with our interactions with the Indian Navy in the month of December. And this edition, we are having this interaction with the Indian Air Force. And moving forward, as our president mentioned, we would be planning for an interaction with the Indian Army, preferably in the month of June. So we would like our members, participants to support us in all these initiatives and help us take this agenda forward. Without further ado, I would like to invite Air Marshal Shashika Chowdhury, AVSM, VSM, to address us, please. Please, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are, sir.
Okay. Good afternoon. Thiru Arun, President, Southern India Chambers of Commerce, Marshal Madheshwaran, sir, distinguished participants from the industry, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to acknowledge the initiative which has been taken by SICKI to organize this virtual event with a theme of aerospace and defense manufacturing and also bringing all the stakeholders in the state of Tamil Nadu to participate in this event to chart out the roadmap for achieving the self-reliance in this sector. As I was briefed and I have gone through the documentation, SICKI is one of the oldest and the vibrant chambers of commerce in India, and it has got a vast capacity and capability which has powered its presence into automotive sector, the country with its superior manufacturing and precision machining capability. It has also attracted significant number of direct investments and which has opened numerous avenues for establishing the manufacturing facilities to collaborate. Coming per se to today's theme, let me focus on the aerospace and defense manufacturing. As you are aware, our country is situated in a troubled continent, with multiple stakeholders are available who are trying desperately to compete with each other, establish their foothold and sphere of influence. In this regard, it is in our national interest that we have a credible deterrent available in a form of both robust offensive as well as defensive capability. All mediums, that is land, air, sea, or even aerospace. As you have just brought out, Mr. President, a significant amount of our budget is being used for procurement of arms from abroad, and the primary reason has been non-availability of niche technology in our country. And that's how we have not been able to produce the arms, and we are looking forward from procuring the same from outside. Traditionally, the defense manufacturing has been reserved to CPSUs and ordnance factories in the past. However, it is a pity that these organizations, though took the technology, never ever invested into house development of R&D and technology, and that is where we always remain dependent on the foreign OEMs to acquire newer and smarter technology. However, it has been seen that with the kind of level of technology which is available in the state of technology, in the state of Tamilnadu, there are large number of manufacturers who are very actively involved in manufacture of large scale and complex aircraft helicopter structures and are exporting the same to the leading aircraft manufacturers in the world. What is more important is that we attend self-reliance and R&D, design, development of newer technologies, design of complex equipment, manufacturing capabilities, which are crucial for maintaining our strategic autonomy and preserving national interest. Having realized that self-reliance is a major cornerstone on which multi-capability of India should rest, there has been a transformation in the approach towards encouraging the indigenous industry. In the recent time, a strong impetus has been given to achieve the self-reliance through the Atmanirbhar Bharat program, and a number of initiatives have been put in place to accelerate this process. To name a few, which I am sure you are aware, but I would still like to bring out the decision to put an embargo on import of 101 different types of defense equipment from abroad, first to encourage the indigenous manufacturing capability. Similarly, DRDO has come out with a list of 108 items which will be designed and developed with the help of Indian industry, where the DRDO would be providing supporting. The FDI in the defense sector on the automatic route has been increased 74% and through government route to 100%. This will bring in large amount of technology as well as the funding. Creation of a separate code head for domestic capital procurement.
Sir, you're muted, sir.
Can you hear me, please?
Yes, sir. Now we can hear you, sir.
Mr. Chowdhury, can I request you to try to see if you can have the mic closer to you?
Am I audible now clearly?
Yes, sir. Now, sir. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So I was talking about IDEX, innovative ecosystem for defense equipment, and which was launched with an aim to create an ecosystem to foster innovation and technology development in the defense and aerospace sector by engaging MSMEs, startups, individual innovators, R&D institutes, academy, as well as to provide support to these R&D efforts through funding. As of now, more than 600 startups have engaged in this program and working on a number of innovative solutions. Similarly, TDF Technological Development Fund, which was set up to encourage the participation of public and private industries, especially the MSMEs, through provision of grants for developing cutting-edge technology in the defense sector. Many of the Indian Air Force projects have been progress on this route. Having seen some of the policy changes which have been put in towards achieving the self-reliance through Make in India initiative, I would like to bring out some of the big ticket projects which are in pipeline, which I'm sure you are fully aware of. The recently concluded contract of 83 LCA Mark I aircraft, Make in India project for manufacture of 114 multi-role fighter aircraft, C295, which is going to be manufactured in India, the light helicopter, utility helicopter, and light combat helicopter. And all these require support from the industry to catch up with the production rate which we are looking for. With the focus on indigenization and indigenous manufacture of products and systems, the Indian industry has been served with a golden opportunity to join the bandwagon to boost the indigenous aviation products. The upcoming projects offer a lot of opportunities for MSMEs as well as the large players to contribute in indigenous development of products. With India opening its defense products to the world, there are also strong possibilities that in the near future we would be able to export our products to friendly foreign countries. This will further enhance the business prospects for the Indian defense equipment manufacturers. Government recently accorded approval for export of 156 lines of defense equipment to the friendly foreign countries, which include LCA, artillery guns, tanks, explosives and missiles, which is considered as a strong step to boost the indigenous defense production capability. Apart from manufacture of aviation equipment, maintenance support to the existing fleet also offers numerous business opportunities. I would like to draw your attention towards indigenization efforts initiated by IAF. It operates a mix of legacy as well as the latest weapon systems for cutting-edge technology. With the fast-paced development of newer technology and obsolescence of the equipment in use, the systems are required to be sustained through sound product support. It is experienced that with the required support diminishing over a period of time, there is a huge challenge in maintaining this operation state. Therefore, self-help through indigenization has been the focus area of Indian Air Force to sustain its fleet. It has become very important for us, and that is the reason why the focus effort has been going on. If I may quote Air Chief Marshal B.H. Dhanuka, he had quoted that I fly a MiG-21 which is 4 decades old, whereas you can't drive a car which is 15 years old in India. It is all possible because the indigenous efforts which have been put in place over the period of time, and we have been able to sustain the fleets even though the OEMs have stopped production of spares and providing product support. These are required to sustain the aircraft and system range of equipment and offer opportunities in industries. The areas of indigenous development of systems, subsystems, indigenization of spares and weapon systems, additionally indigenization of tools, testers, ground support equipment, reclamation of parts, etc. are also areas which present large scope for the industry venture into these. IF has also been engaged in indigenization process since last 4 decades, and we have always encouraged development of indigenous defense equipment through focused and sustained efforts. The base repair depots, which undertake major repair, overall modification, and provide support to the existing fleet of aircraft, helicopters, and other systems. These base repair depots have nodal technology centers which pursue the various indigenization and development projects. The NTCs or nodal technology centers partner with the industry, R&D labs, academia, and further process the development. These entities also function as the incubators and provide necessary support in obtaining necessary certification and quality requirements. It handholds and carries out coordination for all required testing and type approval. As on date, we have more than 1,000 manufacturers who are registered with various PRDs and participating in various indigenization programs. The details of various requirements have been posted from time to time on the Air Force website, and with the concerted effort of our base depots and active participation of the industry, we have been able to indigenize over 50,000 lines of spares till date, which have been utilized for maintenance and sustenance of our combat. Apart from sourcing the spares, the requirement of MRO or repair and overhaul of the equipment is also another area where the industry in Tamilnadu can help Indian Air Force to sustain the fleet. Presently, large number of repairables of the foreign origin from both Russian as well as Western are being sent abroad for its repair and overhaul, as the transfer of technology could not take place earlier, which is not only an expensive affair but also takes very long time to get the required maintenance support. From the aforesaid, it is evident that aviation and aerospace sector offer ample opportunities. The Indian industry in general and Tamil Nadu in particular with its capability participate and contribute to self-reliance pride. I am confident with the synergized efforts of Indian industry, armed forces, and the R&D organizations would not only make defense forces self-sufficient and self-reliant, but also boost the indigenous defense equipment manufacturing capability and capacity to earn additional revenue through export of the equipment to the friendly foreign countries. The current orientation towards self-reliance and favorable policies towards encouraging indigenous defense equipment manufacture has created right kind of environment which would propel India to achieve its stated goal of Atmanirbhar Bharat. I would like to urge the industrial fraternity in state of Tamil Nadu to take advantage of this favorable environment and to enhance the capability and capacity to support us. Then I wish to wish all the participants and organizers all the very best in their future endeavors to achieve the same plans and stated goal which you have set out for yourself. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir, for your address. You have so succinctly outlined the initiatives for self-reliance and have given us a good snapshot of what's happening in the Indian Air Force. Thank you, sir. I would, as our president said, the Honorable Minister could not attend today because of the ongoing assembly session. Because of his interest in this area and because of the importance he accords to events such as ours, the Honorable Minister has recorded his message and he has shared the recording with us. So we would play the recording from the Honorable Minister, and the Honorable Minister also sent his regards, and he has expressed his desire to know about the proceedings of this event. We will now play the recording of the Honorable Minister.
Dignitaries known to be one of the most advanced industrially progressive and competitive state of India. with a very diversified industrial base, strong fundamental, and on above all a well-educated and skilled population. The state is a leader and a pioneer in a number of crucial industrial sectors such as textile, leather, automobile, and auto components, information technology, and healthcare. Tamilnadu has the largest number of factories and largest employment in among all the state of in India. In this context, it would make logical sense for the state to look and defense manufacturing as a next growth engine, especially with the draft Defense Acquisition Procedure 2020 and the Draft Defense Production and Export Promotion Policy 2020 announced by the Minister of Defense. As you are well aware, India's A&D market is among the most attractive globally, and the government of Tamil Nadu is need to leverage this advantage to promote investment in the sector. The Aerospace and Defense Policy 2019 of Tamil Nadu provides the needed incentives and measures to develop a strong domestic capability in defense to give greater inputs for economic growth, skilled job creation, and to support growth of domestic manufacturing and MSMEs. Tamil Nadu announced its a new industries policy 2021 last week with an aim to garner investment worth about rupees 10 trillion by 2025 and great employment opportunity for 2 million by 2025. I am confident that through the new industrial policy 2021, we will achieve an announced growth rate of 15% in manufacturing. Additionally, our government also announced the MSME policy 2021, which has set a target to attract new investments worth 2 trillion in this sector by and create additional employment opportunity for 2 million people. All these initiatives would make Tamil Nadu a strong hub for global manufacturing, especially in the aerospace and defense sector. The state is also focusing on improving infrastructure and reducing the cost of doing business by developing dedicated industrial parks with the defense and aerospace parks in Sriperumbudur and Sulur being notable examples. In addition to the new policies, we have also engaged with the Ministry of Defense in trying to set up R&D centers and other defense public sectors units in Tamil Nadu under the defense corridor, who have made several representations to the Ministries of Defense for the several projects to our industries. The next few years will see considerable change in the dynamic of the industry. The result of liberalization and proactive policy discussions by the government in the last 2 years are being to bear fruit and will gather movements as a discussion are executed. Therefore, the micro, small and medium enterprises MSME sector, which has emerged as a highly vibrant and dynamic sector of the Indian economic. Over the last 5 decades, need to integrate themselves into the supply chains of national and international defense measures in order to reduce dependence on foreign supplies and also to gain a foothold in the international aerospace and defense market. In this connection, this event is quite timely, and I commended the Indian Air Force for being proactive and for choosing the interact with the industries in this region. I hope that this good beginning is sustained and regular interaction such as these are consistently organized. I commended all the participants for their focus in the sector, and I assure you of the support of the industrial department in the promotion of defense manufacturing in the state. I also take this opportunity to thank Siki for their support. With these few words, I wish you a fruitful and enriching learning experience today. Thank you. Nandri, Vanakkam.
We would like to place on record our thanks for our Honorable Minister for taking the time to record his comments. I now request M. Matheswaran, the former Deputy Chief of Integrated Defense Staff and founder, chairman, and president, the Peninsula Foundation, to deliver the theme address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. It's indeed a great pleasure to be here with you all. Let me first, at the outset, thank Mr. Arun, the president of SICCI. This is a wonderful, venture and initiative. And let me also thank for a wonderful exposition by CNC Maintenance Command, Air Marshal Chowdhury. Great pleasure to be here with you, sharing the dice. And good afternoon to all the audience who are listening to the event today. I'm very glad, a few years ago that, the defense corridor for Tamilnadu venture that was initiated by the central government and the state government has gathered sufficient steam, and there's a lot of interest, and in the industries in Tamil Nadu particularly have ventured into it in a big way. This is an extremely good development for the country in the context of national security and national interests. But more importantly, let me come on to some of the brass tacks with respect to what we are talking about today. As President Mr. Arun said, Tamil Nadu is one of the leading states with respect to technical expertise and industrialization in the country. It's the second most industrialized state in the country, or probably the most industrialized state in the country. It has, as compared to national average of manufacturing, which is at 17.5%, Tamil Nadu has a percentage of 34% of its state GDP with respect to manufacturing, which is a very good, share. And the Indian government looks to increase its manufacturing share to 26%, and it's quite a Herculean task given the focus and the largest, expertise that lies in these software areas and IT sectors. The state has, as pointed out earlier, exceptional expertise in manufacturing, the areas of precision engineering, in automobile engineering, in textile machinery. There is a design center for textile machinery in Coimbatore. And of course, there's a variety of other industries that have actually come in, which also leads to development of a significant level of human resources with significant skills, and quite rightly placed to leap off into the defense and aerospace domain. I want to flag few issues, because when you talk about the defense corridor, when you talk about defense industry and linking it to the national theme today, which is Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat, the whole approach is that India, in the context of national security, must have control over critical technologies in the critical domains of defense technologies and reduce our imports. That's one. And second, when we talk about defense corridor, then we talk about developing an ecosystem. And all along, over the last 50 years, the development of an ecosystem has been, the most discussed subject for policy analysts and policymakers. However, we've not gone about it, reasonably well in the past because, like pointed out by the CNC, most of the focus has been on public sector units. The private sector was rarely allowed to enter the defense sector. And that step started off in early 2000s. I was part of the Kelkar committee deliberations for a long time. And with those changes, we moved gradually. Today, the doors are fully open for private sector to enter into it. But an ecosystem is vital. So most of the time when we talk about defense industry, manufacturing products, we tend to focus on the larger picture of aircraft, ships, tanks, but we miss out the main issue. The focus should be on SMEs. SMEs constitute the most important vital strength of a defense industry in the whole country because they create the ecosystem. The larger players become system integrators. They could outsource from anywhere. But if you don't create an ecosystem of SMEs, MSMEs, then innovation doesn't take place, value addition doesn't take place, the export orientation doesn't take place because to survive, you need all of that. And this is what should be the focus. So let me highlight an example how the automobile industry took off you all know that, but I would want to highlight some of the policy related issues. When in the 70s, we were just stuck with ambassadors, premier Padminis and Herald. And then the major took place by bringing in the Suzuki and Maruti. The Maruti became the leader, the big institution that enabled the development of an ecosystem. I'm sure most of you would have read Vijay Mathur, who was one of the main personalities and the chairman, who's written a fine book on the Maruti story. And in that process of developing small, concerns and small MSMEs and developing the ecosystem, that played a vital role in developing the automobile sector. So you found within 2 decades, the components industry, the MRO, repair and overall, infrastructure, the ecosystem set itself on its own with of course, the government support and policy support was there to some extent. But another major orientation was very soon they moved into benchmarking themselves because Suzuki insisted that, benchmarking themselves to international standards. And they opened out into the export market. So export is vital for growth, for setting up standards. And once they broke into the export market, quite naturally, they were more competitive in terms of price. They benchmarked themselves in terms of quality. And while initially they were license producing or, manufacturing built to print model most of the time, quite soon the technology diffusion and absorption took place. They were able to bring in innovation and value addition. And today, the automobile sector is a leading player in the world. For example, the Bharat Forge is a leading forging, industry in the world. The innovation takes place in our automobile industry in a big way. And we are, quite, well established in the global supply chain. So what is the big difference? Why can't that be done in the aerospace sector or in the defense sector? Well, there's a major difference. One, the consumer is a large commercially driven individual consumers. And therefore, the consumer sector for the automobile industry is driven by the market forces. But when you come on the defense side, the user is a specialized user, the defense forces. And the defense forces benchmark themselves on a certain quality, which is absolutely non-negotiable. And therefore, the user is also very selective. It's a small group, it's an elite group. And you need to actually invest much more to build capabilities and capacities and skill levels, and thereafter actually sustain yourself through producing the requirements of the military, not only within the country, but across the world. And that's where the export orientation comes into the picture. If you only focus on meeting the defense forces requirement, you will find that there will be problems in sustaining production continuities. There will be problem in sustaining your innovation investments, and there will be problems in sustaining new product developments, and therefore the importance of export orientation. That is one aspect. But to start with, as the Air Marshal Chowdhury pointed out, there is huge scope for industries, the MSMEs to slot into, filling up substitution models in the components and aggregates area for MRO, particularly. The MRO requirements for the defense is huge. And if for most of the time, when we, as I pointed out earlier, when we now looked at HAL manufacturing aircraft or the shipyards manufacturing ships and the industries are looking at tanks, etc., we forgot to lay adequate emphasis on the MRO aspects, what is known as the ladder of production. In those areas, we ended up actually continuing to rely on the OEMs, the foreign OEMs, for much of our servicing requirements and maintenance requirements. So here we have, when you talk about defense corridor, much of the focus for MSMEs must be to capture this MRO segment, the maintenance segment, the components industry segment, much like what the automobile sector did, for our own military requirement. That itself is huge. When you establish there, then there is a time frame through which technology absorption and diffusion will take place. You'll be able to bring in value addition and slot yourself into the global supply chain. Second, when you need to leapfrog, you need to actually partner with the global players. If you look at SNECMA, when he's a leader in engine design and engine manufacture, SNECMA depends on hundreds of MSMEs. When we talk about contract with an engine technology transfer, SNECMA clearly told us when we spoke about the Kaveri engine issue and plugging some of the shortfalls that we have. SNECMA clearly said, no, I can't guarantee you the technology transfer to you. You will need to make individual contracts with each of my MSMEs because they are the ones who provide value addition. They are the innovators and they are the owners of the knowledge. IPR belongs to them. And this is how the international system works. Therefore, our focus, when you talk about defense corridor, the MSMEs are the key to developing the ecosystem. And this is what we need to actually focus on. That is one part. The second one is, as I said, in terms of skill developments, we need to focus. There is a quantum jump between automobile standards and aerospace standards. And how do you now bring, the scales which can become beneficial in terms of economic terms? We tend to compartmentalize defense aerospace and civil aerospace separately. Industries that work on defense aerospace tend to remain in defense aerospace. Industries that want to go into civil want to move in separately. Here, I think we need to work with the government, encourage the government to actually merge them. All industries that are venturing into aerospace domain must move into both sides. And that way, you will actually be able to bring in the kind of synergy that is required to be brought in. It also makes a lot of economic sense in that context. But there is a bit of a difference. The defense sector, in terms of certification and standards, is is a little different, but we have well-established standards that are already available, right? With CEMILAC leading the way and meeting some of those standards requirements and getting your clearances to be able to substitute some of the components that are originally imported and redo them and getting them tested. We need to give a big push to that. There's been a lot of reluctance in that area. Only if you push that area and have confidence in Indian industries to be able to replace, the same components, for example, a hydraulic pump is replaced and substituted by Indian-made hydraulic pump by one of the Indian MSMEs, gets cleared by the CEMILAC and gets accepted. Not wait for the OEM to actually give the certification all the time. That kind of a risk we have to take to push. That is how the Israelis do it. That is how the French did it, and that is how the Chinese do it. This is an area we need to push the government constantly to be able to do this. I've seen this. I've raised a lot of questions with respect to HAL, who've been license producing for more than 50 years. And this has been a problem area why we haven't developed our own industries to replace much of the dependency on the OEMs. That is one area that's significantly available. Similarly, when you move on to civil aviation requirements, I think the policies are now changing. They're becoming enablers. But it was in the past, while Indian civil aviation sector grew by an average of 25% year on year over the last 15 years, all the airlines were sending the aircraft for servicing and MROs to Colombo, to Bangkok, to Singapore, and to China. And in fact, I did have a major discussion with the facilities that were coming up in for in Fujairah and in Dubai. While we spent money and established an MRO, for example, in Nagpur, for the Air India one was set up by Boeing, and the GMR came up in Hyderabad, our taxation system and our policy enablers were still absent. And therefore, it didn't become profitable for the airlines to get its service within India. And therefore, they were actually preferring to send it across. I think that has changed because I suppose that policy is, the change was mooted in 2016-17, and I suppose that should be a reality now. But this is an area we need to work very, very hard on because the competition is intense. You've got a break because of the pandemic disruption right now. But once everything picks up, the airlines will pick up very strongly. And this is a huge sector. And that sector contributes immensely to, again, your MSMEs to get on to addressing the supply of components, becoming part of the global supply chain, not only here for our requirement, but elsewhere as well. And capturing the MRO sector. MRO is a huge enabler, both in terms of technology absorption, it creates skill levels, and then allows you to become an innovator subsequently. When I first visited Singapore Technologies in 2004, 2005, Singapore Technology at that point of time was doing civil aviation MRO business for worth over $2 billion at that point of time. And they were the major one at that in that time frame. The Chinese have come and overtaken that much within the next few years. So this is an area that we need to be conscious about. So synergize civil aviation and military aviation from the context of developing manufacturing capabilities which can address both. Understand and synergize your requirements to get aligned with military certification requirements and civil certification requirements, which should largely be focusing on EASA and FAA certification requirements for your products. Only then the airlines will accept that. Most airlines that set up MROs now tend to look at setting up both engine overall and airframe overall together. And that's in a way it's a good opportunity because you'll have GE coming and setting up everything over there. But once an Indian industry, an Indian enabler takes over or becomes part of suppliers to enabling the MRO sector, then you gain immensely in that process as well. I believe the sector in the peninsula, the quadrangle as I call it, Chennai, Bangalore, Pune, Hyderabad, is the aerospace segment, aerospace quadrangle in the country. It combines human resources, it combines a lot of technical capabilities, combines a lot of industries with tremendous foundational strengths. This can be leveraged to great extent to develop an ecosystem that we can be very proud of and which can actually compete internationally and become part of the global supply chain. And let's work towards that part. And I think that is the way to go. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And I hope you've enjoyed what I've said today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. We certainly enjoyed a broad perspective and valuable points. And we would be sure to incorporate that into our future strategy and our outreach. Thank you, sir. I now request Mr. B. Ilangovan, Senior General Manager Projects, Tamilnadu Industrial Development Corporation Limited, TIDCO, to address us. Mr. Ilangovan is a veteran. He has been in this field of promoting defense and aerospace in Tamil Nadu for decades. And it is our pleasure to have him here and to listen to his feedback and comments. Mr. Ilangovan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Solomon. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir. You are loud and clear, sir.
Honorable Minister for Industries, Government of Tamil Nadu, Air Marshal Chowdhury, Air Marshal Matheswaran, through RM Arun, President, South India Chamber of Commerce and Industries, other speakers, dignitaries, and ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I thank SICS, CCI for having given me an opportunity to share with you about Tamil Nadu Defense Industrial Corridor. I would like to apprise the gatherings about some of the initiatives that Government of Tamil Nadu and TIDCO has taken over the period to achieve the objectives of the indigenization and indigenization drive of the Defense Ministry and Defense Forces. As we all know, ever since the announcement and the inauguration of the Defense Industrial Corridor by the then Defense Minister in January 2019, a lot of enthusiasm has engulfed among the industry circle and the stakeholders. At the time of launching of the Defense Industrial Corridor by the Honorable then Defense Minister Madam Nirmala Sitharaman, there was a commitment of investments of around 3,123 crore by 10 different companies in Tamil Nadu. As of now, out of these investments, as of now, 960 crore has already been invested, that is realized, and the balance is in various stages of implementation. Apart from this, after the announcement, more than 7,500 crore investments are being planned by more than 20 different companies who are mostly oriented defense manufacturing in Tamil Nadu. All these industries are in across 5 nodes in Tamil Nadu. Out of these, 1,100 crores has already been invested, and we are hopeful that by 2023, the target of achieving 10,000 crore investments in Tamil Nadu Defense Corridor would happen. The government of Tamil Nadu is committed to provide and create an environment where both OEMs and the down the line tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 companies would coexist and find themselves at home in defense corridor. With an intent to give a major fillip to the aerospace and defense industries in the state, our government is in the process of revising the existing aerospace and defense policy. We are hopeful that the revised policy, which is in the anvil, has attractive features that will address the concerns of the defense industry. As of now, as we all know, Tamil Nadu has a very strong manufacturing ecosystem. All the 5 nodes in Tamil Nadu, that is Chennai, Coimbatore, Trichy, Salem, and Hosur, have their own unique capabilities, strengths, and growth potentials. TITO has chalked out a plan for creating adequate infrastructure in each node and provide facilitation to aerospace and defense industry and other entrepreneurs. The government has aggregated larger land banks to set up the defense industries in all the 5 nodes. For example, in Chennai, we have developed 250 acres of land as defense park in Sriperumbudur, wherein more than 20 companies have already started their constructions. And in Coimbatore also, government is planning to create a defense park in 500 acres closer to the Sulur Air Force Station. Like that, in each node, we plan to create the larger land banks to accommodate the defense industrial investments. We have engaged recently the KPMG as our advisors to handhold us for implementing this aerospace defense corridor program. As Air Marshal has rightly emphasized, the MSMEs are the key elements of the defense manufacturing ecosystem. We propose to leverage the strengths of the MSME sectors clusters. This has been the focus area of both central and state government as well. TITCO is promoting the creation of common infrastructure facilities in each of the 5 nodes of the defense industrial corridor, which includes, which will support manufacturing, skill development, and testing, etc. This is a critical gap area that industry has brought to our notice. And one example is that Trichirappalli Engineering and Technology Cluster, that is we call it shortly TREAT, as one of the cluster which has developed a common facility center wherein TITCO is taking more than 40% of the equity. TREAT is a center that has been working very successfully since 2017. It has a very generous grant from central government as well. Members of the industry in Trichy has also invested a huge amount for setting up this common facility. TITCO is stepping in as an equity partner to help enhance the common facilities at this center and also aiming at catering to the aerospace and defense industry sector. As of now, only 10% of this output is towards the defense sector. We plan to increase to 30 to 40% in 2 to 3 years time from this Trichy Common Facility Center. In each node, we plan to set up common facilities. In some of the nodes, we plan to augment the existing facility also. We are also closely working with Codizia and Hostia as well. We are in discussion with major companies like Tata Technologies, Dassault Systems, GE Aviation for setting up Center of Excellences in advanced technologies and additive manufacturing, aiming to the defense manufacturing. Similarly, we are very keen to set up the defense testing infrastructure, testing facilities, which is the real lacuna where all these MSMEs are facing. We have recently submitted our request for information to the Government of India, wherein we have stated that we plan to set up the common testing facility, defense testing facility in 3 different locations. One is in Trichy, and other one is in Chennai itself, wherein the Aero Hub is coming. And third one is in Ulundurpet, where we want to create a testing facility exclusively for unmanned aerial vehicle systems. Today also we are meeting with the stakeholders to frame up the project proposals. Apart from these, we are also conducting the vendor meets to cater to the defense forces and the OEMs as well. We have had several rounds of discussions with defense BRDs and HAL and institutions like ADA to create a very stronger local supply chain ecosystem. As of now, there is there are certain gaps, and we want to bridge that gap, being a platform wherein the suppliers will also approach TIDCO, and wherein the defense forces who needs the equipments and sub-assemblies and components will approach TIDCO, so that we can form a platform as a bridge. So this is how we are trying to create the local ecosystem. And we're also our confidence level has really growing up as a result of our continuous interactions with the key stakeholders like DRDO, DDP, Armed Forces, DPSUs, ISRO, and OEMs, and then the industrial units across our state. We are happy to understand that recently Government of India has offered orders to HVF and CVRD to the tune of 20,000 crore. Out of that, most of the value will go into the MSMEs who are forming the supply chain ecosystem around that area. We are working towards attracting one or few major global OEMs. We are in touch with them. We are hopeful that very soon, maybe in a few months down the line, large investments can also happen by the OEMs in our state. And TIDCO also has made efforts to synergize the efforts of the industries department, the MSME department, and the guidance and other Tamilnadu investment agencies such as guidance, TIAC, Tamilnadu Industrial Finance Corporation, to name a few, to avoid duplication of our efforts and achieve the target set for the Tamilnadu Defense Industrial Corridor. We are keen to work with Southern India Chamber of Commerce and Industries and other industry bodies in enhancing the collective defense manufacturing capabilities in Tamil Nadu. And with these few words, I would like to conclude we are hopeful that in a couple of years down the line, we will see very strong and vibrant ecosystem emerging in Tamil Nadu, which would be the base for the global aerospace and defense manufacturing companies, not only for their manufacturing, but also for outsourcing their requirement. This is how we plan to create the ecosystem here, and we are sure that this aim will be achieved with all the support of you stakeholders like you people and both the governments. With these few words, I would like to conclude my speech. Thank you once again. I thank SIC for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your address. There were a lot of members who really did not know the progress and the updates with regards to the defense corridor in the state. You have given us a detailed overview, and this, I believe, would be very useful. And we would, as a chamber, do our best to ensure that there is awareness on the various projects that are happening across the state and on the critical work that TIDCO is championing for the development of aerospace industry in the state. Thank you, sir. I would now like to request Dr. Vinod Surana to address us. Dr. Vinod Surana is a legal advisor to the Ministry of Defense. He has a PhD from the Cornell University in the US. And Dr. Vinod Surana has worked significantly on the defense manufacturing corridor with our former Raksha Mantri. And he was one of the recent speakers at the Aero India show. He's the co-chairman for ASSOCHAM, a southern region, and he's also the vice chairman of the All India Manufacturers Association and a chairman for the National Institution for Quality and Reliability. I now request Dr. Vinod Surana to speak on the regulatory aspects and the strategy for defense manufacturing in Tamil Nadu. Dr. Surana, please. Dr. Surana, we are not able to hear you. Dr. Surana, can you unmute and speak, please? Sorry, we are not able to hear you.
Vinod, maybe you can call him and speak to him.
Sure.
Or maybe you can go ahead to the next speaker until then.
Dr. Surana, can you log out and log in, please? I'll just speak to you. Friends, we are also preparing a report on aerospace manufacturing in Tamil Nadu, the status, jointly with SAS partners. So this report would be released tomorrow. As our president had earlier mentioned, we have a CXO conclave organized, and the Honorable Industries Minister will be our chief guest, and he would be releasing the report.
Yes, now can
tomorrow.
you hear me?
Yeah, now we hear you loud and clear. Please go ahead.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Honorable President of the Southern Chamber, Mr. Arun.
Yes, connectivity is poor.
Mr. Surana, maybe we should, you can turn off your video and just join by audio. We are not able to hear you clearly.
Okay. Am I audible now?
Yes, it's better. Please go ahead.
Okay. It is a great pleasure for me to speak. I thank the Chamber for this opportunity. I have been asked to speak on the topic of regulatory aspects in defense manufacturing, and a strategy for Tamil Nadu. A very vast subject to cover in 15 minutes. So I will attempt to give you a broad view and will be glad to answer as many questions as possible and as time permits. Law, they say, is a combination of social norms, and it is also said to be an instrument of social change. So I will make my presentation in three parts. One, I will make a few points on the favorable and emerging background in the industry and government. Then speak about three specific regulatory frameworks by the Tamil Nadu government, and then go on to speak about the national regulatory framework. My firm was mandated in 2019 to study the business and regulatory framework for defense manufacturing available worldwide and recommend practical steps for greater engagement of India's private sector in defense manufacturing. Many of the points we have recommended have already been implemented. I believe we are facing a perfect storm in a positive way, with many favorable circumstances emerging at the same time. As we know, defense manufacturing in any country, first and foremost, depends upon the home country sourcing a bulk of its defense equipment locally. And this is beginning to happen. The current government at the center has initiated several steps towards self-reliance and towards export of defense equipment. It is placing more and more systems, equipment, and platforms on do not import list. As our earlier speakers have said, orders worth tens of thousands of crores have been given to the local industry, be it the Tejas aircraft, the Arjun tanks, ships and submarines, etc. Another favorable is that the Indian private sector has risen to the challenge by producing either under license or developing on their own technology several small and large components, systems, subsystems, and platforms for all three services, as well as the various paramilitary and internal security agencies. Another favorable point is that in the recent past, warfare strategy and technologies are undergoing revolutionary changes with the advent of sophisticated sensor, software, and electronics-driven components and equipment becoming available in the past decade. Asymmetric warfare is now becoming the norm. Wars are beginning to be fought remotely over vast distances. As Air Marshal Matheswaranji said, there has to be an emphasis to synergize civil and military industries. And today, the lines between civil and military technologies is becoming blurred. The technology we use for autonomous cars and drones depend on fair and fail-proof wireless communication, sensors, and onboard computing technologies that are very similar to the ones used by the defense sector. India today aims at becoming a $1 trillion economy, and our state, Tamil Nadu, is expected to quadruple from being a $250 billion economy to a $1 trillion economy in the coming decade. So it is in this background that I speak about the enabling regulatory infrastructure at the state level and the central level. The recently announced Tamil Nadu industrial policy, the new industrial policy, and the new MSME policy, coupled with the Tamil Nadu Business Facilitation Act, are a favorable regulatory and legal support framework which has put the state in a very enviable position. Some of the key highlights of the Tamil Nadu industrial policy which was announced recently is incentives and a thrust for research and development, warehousing, logistics, expansion of existing units, and the setting up of new units. The state GST-based incentives have been given for fixed and flexible capital subsidy and turnover subsidy. There are tremendous incentives and regulatory framework for sunrise industries and sectors such as electronic system design and manufacturing, electric vehicles, EV cells and renewable energy equipment, etc. So this Tamil Nadu industrial policy is supported by the new MSME policy, which aims to make Tamil Nadu a global supply hub, for which it is vital to have and attract many MSME firms. An ecosystem of vibrant smaller firms is found to be very attractive for larger firms, including Tier 1 and OEMs. As Air Marshal Matheshwaran said, MSMEs are vital for the defense manufacturing ecosystem, as over 70% of all defense manufacturing worldwide is done by MSMEs. The key highlights of the MSME policy of the state include a 50% land purchase subsidy for setting up units in 22 backward districts. The MSME capital subsidy has been increased from 5 million to 15 million rupees. And MSMEs and startups are exempted from approvals for establishment of and operations for 3 years from the start date based on self-certification. The MSME policy also has tremendous incentives and subsidies for shifting of operations from relocating of operations from other jurisdictions. So these two policies, regulatory framework, set up a fantastic support for the ecosystem to develop. This, coupled with the Tamil Nadu Business Facilitation Act of 2018, which has been a pioneering legislation which not only facilitates single point of receipt of applications and grant of clearances, but also provides for time-bound renewals with an effective guidance redressal mechanism, and very importantly, fines on competent authorities who fail to act within prescribed time limits. So these three regulatory frameworks are very powerful system for promoting industrial growth in Tamil Nadu. Now coming to the second part, which is the role of the government of Tamil Nadu. Mr. Ilangovan has given in detail the various steps the government of Tamil Nadu has taken in the last 3 years, following the case study which I had presented to the government of India. A part of the case study also mentions about the last part of the envisaged corridor, Hosur, which has the country's longest airstrip and a good ecosystem for developing MRO facilities and aerospace related manufacturing facilities. One point which the government of Tamil Nadu could consider is to lobby with the central government for establishment within the boundaries of Tamil Nadu various R&D labs and the defense public sector undertaking units. Democracy, after all, is a system of competitive lobbies. Lobby to get in these R&D units, labs, and DPSU units, apart from the ones which we already have. Now let us take a look at. At the national regulatory framework available. Procurement procedure of 2016, institutional basis, streamlines and simple procedure to boost local manufacturing or make in India. The DPP aims to promote indigenous design and manufacture of defense platforms and systems and subsystems. The recently announced Defense Acquisition Procedure of 2020 has a thrust on self-reliance, what we call Atmanirbhar Bharat. The DAP 2020 aims to strengthen domestic industry through the Make in India initiative. Technical points in the DAP, we have 3 different categories, like Buy Indian, 50% indigenous content, Buy Indian, 60% indigenous content, Buy Global, have another category called bio, in which there are two subcategories. The details are on the screen. Has government funding as well as industry funding policies, the emphasis being to design, manufacture in India. The object of the entire regulatory framework, as we have recommended to the government, to ensure either technology to India or developed in India through a supporting innovation boosting mechanism. Now, the government has, for the sake of innovation, set up a development fund under the DRDO, and it has set for innovations for defense excellence initiative under the Defense Innovation Organization. To boost design and development, regulatory framework is in place with the aim to enable acquisition and introduction of equipment and systems. The government has enhanced the foreign direct investment limit to 74%. So up to 74%, it is under the automatic route, and above that, government approval is required. Now, one thing the industry will have to realize is any defense manufacturing will require government approval. Any change in ownership pattern will require to be disclosed as post change information. A quick overview, if you take a look at this slide, it will give you a list of various the defense manufacturing, though this, and it lists down many rules and regulations and laws. What is happening today is the entire framework supported by the central government and the state government is one of enabling the private manage and manufacture high quality, high technology defense items in India. The mechanism, the Arbitration and Conciliation Act, provides for very strict timelines within which disputes have to be settled, disputes have to be adjudicated. There are penalties if the arbitration goes beyond the mandated time. The Commercial Code in 2018 has a strict time limit for adjudication of disputes. Mediation has become mandatory. The whole point I'm trying to make here is that even the dispute years or decades has been a source of ridicule, has now become very, very industry friendly, and it is as per international norms. I mean, I've tried to give you in a very short time a broad framework of what has been happening in India in the industry at the regulatory framework level at the state, at the regulatory framework level at the center. I will be happy to answer any number of questions either now or immediately after the panel discussions. Sorry, thank you. Thank you, sir. Over to Vinod Solomon.
Thank you, Dr. Surana. Thank you for bringing a new perspective. Thank you for can I request the members to kindly mute, please? Yeah. We'll now move on to the next part of our session, which is about showcasing Tamil Nadu. We move to the panel discussion. As I was referring to it earlier, so we have jointly with SAS Partners and Sugosha Advisory prepared a knowledge report. So this report would be released tomorrow at the SICI CXO Conclave at Hotel Le Royal Meridian by the Industries Minister himself. So I would now request Mr. Vijay Kumar, who's the Advisor, India Entry and International Affairs for SAS Partners Corporate Advisor, to brief the participants about the report, to virtually release it and take over the panel, take over the rest of the sessions. Mr. Vijay Kumar, as many of you know, he is a person who's multifaceted. He had been an economist. He had supported business and trade facilitation and investments as a part of the Dutch mission here, and has decades of experience, especially facilitating businesses in the defense and aerospace sector. So without further ado, I would now like to request Vijay to take over the proceedings, share about the report, and moderate the panel discussion. Over to you, Vijay.
Thank you very much, Vinod. Thanks very much for your very flattering introduction, as I might say. It's a great pleasure to be part of the Southern India Chamber of Industry and Commerce and Industries second edition of the Aerospace and Defense webinar series. We did one 2 months ago, which was a very big success. And, we partnered SAS and South India Chamber partnered together, and we decided, because there was so much interest in the previous one, we decided that we will do a series, and that's why we chose the next one to be on aerospace. Today, as you heard already, we had some very good speakers, very eminent speakers from the defense, as well as from the industry and from the government, and of course, Dr. Surana has spoken about the legal aspects, which is again something very, very, very useful and very interesting to anybody who wants to enter the aerospace and defense space. What we're going to do now is that we have a panel of 6 highly experienced members from different aspects of industry, and they are going to give us their views on how they see from their personal experience and from their organization viewpoint, what are the opportunities that exist for the aerospace sector. I'm, as Vinod said, my name is Vijay Kumar, and I am an advisor with SAS Partners Corporate Advisory, which is a Chennai-based organization, and they have been advising on to a lot of domestic as well as international companies on a number of areas. I would now like to start. What I will do is, rather than give a lengthy introduction to each one, I will start with each speaker separately, and I would ask the speaker himself to introduce himself briefly, and then give us a brief idea of what the company is doing, and then I will ask them questions. I'd like to start, in fact, here with Mr. Shekhar. Mr. Shekhar is the president of the Aerospace Industry Development Association for Tamil Nadu. And, Mr. Shekhar's organization is a young organization. It was set up in 2016 to promote the aerospace industry here in Tamil Nadu, and to provide infrastructure for those interested in setting up aerospace industries in Tamil Nadu. Mr. Shekhar, would you be kind enough to give us an overview of what the Aerospace Industry Development Association of Tamil Nadu is about, and how much of your objectives have been achieved in the last 5 years? Mr. Shekhar?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So just 1 second. So thank you very much for this opportunity. As Mr. Vijay said, I head the Aerospace Industry Development Association, Tamil Nadu. Are you able to see my slides?
No.
Okay.
Could you please share the slide?
Yeah, I'm sharing. About now?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I head the Aerospace Industry Development Association of Tamil Nadu. This is an organization that was founded in 2015, got registered in 2016. So we're about a 5-year-old organization. This has been done in conjunction with the Tamil Nadu Industry Development Corporation, with Mr. Ilangovan. As others pointed out, Mr. Ilangovan has been at the forefront of driving aerospace and defense industry in Tamil Nadu. And we felt that there was a need for forming a aerospace and defense oriented association to promote this ecosystem. So that's how this came about. So I've been the president since 2016 with very eminent people supporting me. And Dr. Christopher, who used to be the former chairman of, who used to be the chairman of DRDO until he retired in 2018 and is currently a professor at IIT Madras. He's our chairman. And we have many other industrialists who are part of our executive board. I thought I will give I'll give a little bit of overview before I get into what SIDAT has done so far. If you look at the current status of Tamil Nadu aerospace and defense ecosystem, there are more than 500 companies that are identified as those who are engaged in aerospace and defense, the defense corridor, Tamil Nadu defense corridor. And as you can see on the left-hand side, the corridor consists of 5 nodes, as it's called, Chennai, Trichy, Salem, Coimbatore, and Hosur. And all of these have their own unique strengths, and these are going to be leveraged for developing this corridor. And in that 500 plus companies, we have identified more than 50 companies that are just in startups and just in drones itself, and they're growing fast. So as drones, as UAVs or unmanned aerial vehicles as it's called, is a very new sector, and it has a very low barrier to entry. And this has created significant number of companies that are coming into this space. And we also have some very interesting companies that are in the startup zones beyond drones as well. Out of these 500 companies, most of them are MSMEs. We have a handful of large companies in Tamil Nadu, but most of the companies are MSMEs, and they supply to DPSUs and some global companies. DPSUs are the defense public sector units, which are 14 of them. Plus, they also work with ISRO. They work with research organizations like CBRD and DRDO labs. And the Tamil Nadu defense activity is kind of a little bit limited now, in that the export from Tamil Nadu is kind of limited, and that's an area for growth for the Tamil Nadu industries. What probably needs to be done for this industry to grow faster is to have better skill development. I will address that in a slide down the line. So concentration right now of all the industries in aerospace and defense is primarily in Chennai, Coimbatore, and Hosur. Like what Mr. Rangovan was explaining, Trichy is being spearheaded now through TREAT, and Salem, we have a Salem cluster that's also coming up. So with that, all the 5 nodes will be connected, and we will add value to the defense and aerospace ecosystem. So if you look at the global versus Indian defense structure, global defense structure actually has 4 or more tiers. At the top is integrators. If you look at the defense manufacturers, it would be people like Lockheed Martin or Boeing. If you look at civil, it would be Boeing, Airbus, Embraer, and companies like that. And then you would have the second level, which would be people like Spirit Aerosystems and others, who actually provide large components or subsystems to the main integrator. And then you would have tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers, and then of course component suppliers. So if you look at it, integrator is probably less than 10 across the world. The tier 1 suppliers are probably about 500. The tier 2 suppliers are about 5,000, and component suppliers are probably 50,000 across the world. So that's how the pyramid is done. But if you look at India over the last 3-4 decades, the main integrator has been in the defense sector has been HAL. So they actually did all the integration, and they did all the 80% of value addition. Component suppliers were few, and it was a developing ecosystem. And hopefully this will transform itself into what you see on the right-hand side, which is that the integrator will do less and less value addition and primarily focus on assembling and also perhaps on the design of the products. For example, the LCA is a great example of that. So now HAL has outsourced quite a bit of that LCA manufacturing while they focus on design and assembly. And a lot of that component for LCA is now being produced by the private industries, especially for the Make 1 and Make 2, Make 1A series. And many of you might have heard of this term called offsets. So when international companies sell into India, the Indian government requires them to make sure that they produce some amount of revenue within the country, and this is called an offset. And this is done primarily to encourage domestic manufacturing and also to create the domestic industry to be part of the global supply chain. So when that offset is actually discharged, the DPSUs garner a large portion of it because that's where a lot of the manufacturing is available right now. So that goes to about 40% of that. Large private industry gets about 30%, 33%. You see quite a bit of joint ventures now with Tatas and Mahindras and others. And the other private industry get about 27% of that. But if you look at where the offset is coming from, most of the offset is coming from Air Force, because Air Force is the one that's buying platforms from across the world. Navy buys a few and Army buys a little, but 80% of the defense offset comes from Air Force, and that basically leads into aerospace kind of opportunities. So what is required in the expertise that are required if you want to be in the aerospace and defense industry? And these are all the various kind of expertise that is required for the ecosystem. It doesn't mean that all of this needs to be available within one company, but these are the kind of expertise that needs to be developed for the ecosystem to survive and grow. Even things like flight testing, safety and certification specialists, MRO, which has been talked about a lot, even writers, lawyers, and accountants, because when you deal with international companies, you need to be very clear about your obligations and requirements to meet international expectations. So if you look at what the current capabilities are there in Tamilnadu Defense Industrial Corridor, on the left-hand side, you see all the various capabilities that are required as part of a supply chain. And the right-hand side, you see companies that are involved in providing most of that. For example, if you look at aircraft and helicopter structural parts, LMW, L&T, they are providing quite a bit of work, for example, for LCA. The emerging areas like 3D printing or composites manufacturing, there are startups as well as existing companies that are providing support or manufacturing help. And of course, there is software systems and electronics. Tamil Nadu has a significant electronic presence, and we provide significant electronic products and services for the industry. Coming back to IDAT, as Vijay was introducing, we are about a 6-year-old association. We've been growing consistently over the last 6 years. We've had a huge growth in the last 1 year, even though we had the COVID-19 lockdown, but we have had a significant growth in the last 1 year. And we have patron members, 5 of them, as well as corporate members, 102, across various sectors, manufacturing, service, academia, and all these areas. So what has IDAT done in terms of activities? Other than our normal webinars and knowledge sharing and some kind of B2B activities that we regularly do with our members and potential customers, we are engaged in some large activities also. For example, we are right now working on a project Netra, which is to provide airborne radar systems for using a consortia approach. We hope that this will be an export-oriented opportunity, which is already a proven platform. So we have put together a consortium of industries that are ready to provide this, and we are in negotiation with Ministry of Defense. Mr. Ilangovan already talked about Defense Testing Infrastructure Scheme. So we are working with TIDCO on putting this together, again with a consortium approach to help the sunrise sector of drone testing with Ulundurpet as a potential zone. IDAT is also leading another consortium for what is called as the BVLOS testing trials, which is a beyond visual line of sight. As you know, drones are typically flown within the line of sight. But if you want to go beyond line of sight, there are certain regulations that needs to be formed. So the Ministry of Civil Aviation and the DGCA are working on that. So these 15 consortiums will provide inputs for the Ministry of Civil Aviation to form the necessary regulations. We are also working with another global OEM for setting up additive manufacturing center of excellence. Again, this was mentioned by Mr. Ilangovan. This is for the aerospace and other markets. So we believe that this will be a moment like when Ford came to Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu could become the additive manufacturing hub for India, because this is a very significant kind of project. And Chennai Aeropark has been set up by SIPCOT and Tidal and TRICO. And this is a Chennai-based cluster for aerospace and defense companies. And IDAT is very actively working on promoting that with our members. About 5 of our members have already taken land there and started construction. In addition to the the Advanced Computing and Design Engineering Center that Mr. Ilangovan was mentioning. So similarly, we work with and initiate and lead consortia for based on member needs. We constantly work with the various divisions of Tamil Nadu government. We also provide inputs for the policies that are coming out with respect to aerospace and defense. Most importantly, we are organizing a defense expo in Tamil Nadu in Chennai Trade Center from 15th to 17th June, which is a 3-day exhibition and seminar. We expect more than 250 MSMEs, large manufacturers, some overseas companies, as well as armed forces to participate in that. This is basically to expose our ecosystem to the opportunities out there. This event is supported by Ministry of Defense. We are co-organizing this along with TIDCO as a partner and the Department of Defense. And we have a special pricing for micro and startup units to ensure that they also gain from participating in this. And the focus for this is not just products, but also in clothing, leather, food, rubber, and services, which is also important from a defense perspective. So with that, I conclude my presentation, and hopefully this was useful to all of you. And any questions, I'm available to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shekhar. Just a couple of follow-up questions on what you said just now. You mentioned in one of your slides about skill development. So skill development obviously is an extremely important area. And would there be space given by the Tamil Nadu government, either in the aerospace park or outside, for universities or skill for knowledge institutions to set up, especially related to the aerospace sector?
I would answer from the association perspective. If Mr. Ilangovan is still around, he can talk about whether he will give the space or not, because it's controlled by Tidal and TIDCO. Definitely, that would be an ideal place for us to have the skill development center, because it's going to be across among the cluster that's going to form there. Skill development is very important. Most importantly, we require technical skills or vocational skills that is missing. So when the automotive industry came, like Air Marshal Matheswaran was pointing out, they had to create the ecosystem, they had to create the supply chain. So which means that the OEM had to invest a lot of money in transferring knowledge and transferring skills and developing the skills within the ecosystem. And similarly, we need to prepare probably, for example, there's a great opportunity for us to migrate automotive manufacturers into aerospace manufacturers. Like again, what Dr. Matheswaran was talking about, Air Marshal Matheswaran talking about, there is a leap between automotive and aerospace. So that leap can be filled by providing the skill development. So there are opportunities, and we hope to work with Tidal, TIDCO, and SIPCAT to see if we can do it at the Aerospace and Computing and Design Engineering Center.
Good afternoon. To supplement Mr. Segar's, I'm Yalangovan, sir, from TIDCO. To supplement Mr. Segar's views on the skill development, in fact, we have identified skill augmentation and development is one of the very critical area to support aerospace manufacturing. And sensing that, we have earmarked more than 50,000 square feet of space in the Aero Hub, that is Advanced Computing Design Engineering Center, which is coming up in Sriperumbudur. We expect many skill development institutions to come and set up their facilities there. It is not the single location, it can be anywhere in the state. We are ready to partner with them. Recently, for your information, we have signed an MOU with the Aerospace and Aviation Sector Skill Council of Bangalore. So skilling is a really an important aspect which we are giving trust. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much for the clarification. Indeed, it's very interesting that the Tamil Nadu government is focusing on the skill aspects. Our next, I'd like to invite the next speaker, who is Mr. Bharat Malkani. Mr. Malkani is the president of the MRO Association of India, and he's also the chairman of Max Aerospace. He has tremendous experience in the field of MRO. MRO stands for, of course, maintenance, repair, and overall. And Mr. Malkani, could you begin by giving us an overview of the status of the MRO industry in India?
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Are you able to see and hear me?
Yes, very clear.
Excellent. So, good afternoon to all of you. A special regards to Air Marshal Matheswaran, who's been a guide to me for a long time. I'm not sure if he's still online, but if he's alive, I'm saying hello to him.
Thank you, Bharat. Great to see you.
Good to see you too, sir. So the MRO industry has had a long innings coming out of a bad patch. Full credit, and this is not a political statement, to the current dispensation of the Ministry of Civil Aviation. For a very long time, we have lived in the fear of having a lopsided tax policy that essentially gave Indian MROs an 18% GST and high customs duty. And for foreign imports, so if you were, let's say, an airline called Indigo, as an example of question, if you bought your MRO through a foreign source, it was at 5%. You can well imagine it was a pointless exercise to invest in an MRO. Those who did and have succeeded, a handful of us, have done it because of our absolute passion and dedication to aviation. But on the 1st of April last year, and it is not a joke, the Ministry of Civil Aviation, in conjunction with Ministry of Finance, took away all customs duties on MRO. So we had zero customs duty for aircraft parts. And our GST on the services was reduced from 18% to 5%, making us on par. Now, if you see in terms of statistics, it is even more interesting. We import in excess of 90% of our MRO requirements as a nation. It is estimated in the year ended 2019-20, notwithstanding the 2 or 3 weeks that we ended up having a lockdown due to COVID, the total import bill for just civil MRO was in excess of $1.5 billion, and military MRO would have been our estimate, because we do not have direct information from HAL and the forces, is in excess of $3 billion. Enormous numbers. Absolutely enormous numbers, and as a nation, unpardonable that we've not been able to do something better for a country that builds, as we claim, 300,000 plus engineers a year, and we then employ them in banks doing some mundane job. whereas the person really could be doing much more with his or her life as an MRO engineer, amongst other things. So opportunity is now there. But like every opportunity, it's tempered. It's tempered with the fact that it is not the easiest of businesses to come in. The pass rate for our engineers when we put them through the ringer, we have to score 91% above. So it is, again, you don't go with an option in the air. I left pneumatics in choice. If the plane failed in pneumatics, I'm sorry. I still managed to get a 50% pass rate. So it is very dedicated. The people who come must be dedicated. The organization must be dedicated. A little bit about us. Max Aerospace is India's leading component MRO. Mateshwaran Saab did speak about that. We are the largest component MRO. Started this company in a little garage, 80 square feet. And we have grown since then. We have our own hangars. We are also deployed at about 11 air bases, including Kanpur, Chandigarh, Sulur, Naval Base at Goa. We have two aspects in our country, in our company. One is the direct MRO that we do for components and for airframe. And the second is aircraft modification. Max Aerospace has modified in excess of 250 military aircraft till date. We perhaps have modified more aircraft than anybody except HAL in the country, and are at least a generation ahead of anybody out there. We are also the only organization with a comprehensive FAA approval and a EASA approval and a DGC approval from the civil side and from the military, CEMILAC, DGAQA and PESO. PESO because we also have a license that allows us to weaponize aircraft, and it is one of our core capabilities to be able to deal with explosives, arms and ammunition. When you go back to the MRO side, the single largest challenge that one would face today and continues to face is the incredible presence of HAL across the board for the military side. This is a discussion we've had many times in the past. We truly believe HAL is a phenomenal company for manufacturing. Boeing doesn't repair its planes, neither does Airbus, neither does Bombardier. And I'm pretty sure that Cessna and Beechcraft don't do it either. So it is time that we see this huge fund spent on the likes of an HAL in tens of thousands of crores that can be better utilized to build aircraft for the country. I saw the pyramid before this presentation, very smart. That pyramid is so right. So we need a lot more MSMEs that can be there. But when you look at HAL, HAL must be that master integrator as opposed to doing also MRO. HAL's revenues, I believe, from MRO would exceed that from manufacturing. And that in itself is a challenge. Now, if that opportunity opens up, I see a genuine surge across the country of people being able to do, and I'm still limiting myself to military MRO, and we'll come to civil after that, a large amount of MRO capability. Because competing with HAL is almost impossible given the infrastructure they have, the scale they have, and it is not necessary for them to be profitable. Classic example, Air India. It has never been necessary for Air India to be profitable. We want it to be profitable, but it is not necessary for them to be profitable because even if they are not being funded by the central government, they will still rise up the next day and continue to go back to work. So, moment you have private enterprise, no matter how intelligent and flexible and capable of doing the job, they need to be profitable because none of us are going to work this business for charity. And hopefully the powers that are controlling our nation and they're making the strides towards more and more either public-private partnership or disinvestment will eventually lead us down that path where at least insofar as MRO is concerned, the opportunity will be given to Indian industry to be able to compete on a level playing field and then prove their capability. And what will be surprising is that the cost at that point we will find will fall even lower and as opposed to what the Air Force and the Army, Aviation, and Coast Guard or Navy is paying today, because you will get efficiencies of scale. On the civil MRO, the opportunity is again existing. We have a very robust growing airline industry and general aviation industry. Matter of fact, what I have been told is that this year, Indigo is the single largest purchase of Airbus of any airline in the world, the narrow body. And while that is a matter of great pride as an Indian, it also brings to me a sense of sadness that we manufacture just about nothing on the A320 in this country. Offsets were mentioned. We have not been able to take the value of the offsets in the civil side. Mercifully, civil manufacturing and MRO has been included in offsets in the latest DDP. And we expect that DIPP, and we expect that to continue to grow. But when one talks of civil MRO, the challenge that new entrants will face is that of licenses. So the world has been consolidating while India has been soft pedaling. But 25, 30 years ago, we are now in our 28th year. When I started, the OEMs would reach out to us, literally beg for us to do their do it. They sold it and they walked away, a local person handled it. Over a period of time, as planes became more robust and sales were now getting a greater level of support from spare sale and MRO, the OEM became more and more the MRO. And today you've reached a stage where the OEM has realized not just being an MRO, but consolidation. So in Europe, Safran is the consolidated big boy. They have just about all the products except Thales. And in the United States, we take a company like Raytheon. They also own Rockwell Collins. They also own UTC, Hamilton Sundstrand, Goodrich. There's got to be some Pratt Whitney. So the list of consolidation has become very big globally. And in order for an Indian company to do MRO, it is so critical to have the OEM license. Failure to do which, you don't get the technical documentation, you don't get the training, and you won't even get spares. Now, it is not a difficult task to go past this hurdle, provided we have a government that will now start to flex its muscle as a purchaser of the largest number of aircraft in the world. All other governments have gotten the act together and have told the big OEMs that if you're selling a plane to us or a system, you have got to give what we call MTOT, maintenance TOT, transfer of technology. Since MRO was always something that was on the side, strangely enough, MRO was clubbed with ground handling until almost 2016, when NCAP was written, and our Prime Minister mentioned MRO in his budget speech. Under ground handling, you had cleaning of aircraft and your luggage handling and your step ladder handling. So perhaps historically that was true. MRO did a ground handling job. Today it's extremely specialized, cutting edge technology, and also very disciplined. You have to have a very high level of discipline to successfully deliver. Most of us MROs in our country have to guarantee each of the airlines that they will get from 3,200 to 3,600 flying hours of their aircraft per year with a 99% uptime. If you think about that, to deliver this day on day, every day of the year consistently, there is no Saturday, Sunday in an MRO like there is no Saturday, Sunday in an airline. There is no day or night either. You have to be able to deliver this product consistently. And then historically, to have faced hostile regulations was very difficult. But today you have a chance. I think Indian industry has a huge chance. We still need to go past some very tough hurdles of OEMs not being able to support. We don't really have any OEM in India, not one. So if you were to take the big 4-5 aircraft manufacturers of the world, Boeing, Airbus, Embraer, Bombardier, which has now become part of Airbus, even their consolidation has taken place, or Textron, which is Beechcraft Cessna, some Japanese Mitsubishi. Not a single part, not one, is manufactured in a country of 1.3 billion for any of these organizations. And I think it's a shame, but I think this will change. And I think it is time that we had our own aircraft as well. And that's where I appreciate the efforts of the government of Tamil Nadu in creating a cluster and a concept of, civil and defense aerospace. But to give you a little insight on that, gentlemen, based on my experience, aviation works from primary metros. Never forget that. You would like to make a cluster and you would like to create a corridor and whatever else. I'm talking aerospace, I'm not talking defense. And this concept has been tried in many parts of the world and has not necessarily succeeded. Matter of fact, if you see the biggest MRO for, let's say, British Airways is Heathrow, Air India will still continue to be Bombay, Delhi. Air France is Paris. The reason for that is you need to have access and quick turnaround times. You need to be at a major metro. So, do your metros need additional airports? Absolutely. I cannot imagine a country of our size where the likes of the Mumbai, Delhi, Chennai, Kolkata, whatever, Bangalore have one airport each. None of these big cities I've mentioned have one airport. They have minimum 3 going up to 5. So, the real airports at our major metros, expecting to run an MRO, for example, in a small town. Let's take my state, Maharashtra. We have built an airport at a religious place called Shirdi, known for a preacher by the name of Sai Baba. And the land is being offered. Nobody's taken a square inch to do MRO, even if the land came free. Because who in their right mind is going to be able to actually set up functional MROs in Mofussil areas? So the request to the state government members and the people who have empowered listening is that please do the state a favor. Be the first state to break out of this shackles of colonial Raj and build multiple airports at your major metro. In your case, Chennai. And you will have the rush of every MRO coming to your city. It doesn't have to be, right next to your existing airport. Or if you have land at the existing airport, you could allot that to MRO. But it could be within a small distance from Chennai. Also useful for your domestic and international travel. You will find success. The biggest challenge we have from MRO is lack of enough space. We understand that in our interactions with the Ministry of Civil Aviation, the Airports Authority of India, that still owns a substantial number of airports in this country, are making rapid changes, which, as I understand, will be announced as early as tomorrow, based on the interaction we've had, on the major changes for allotment of space to MRO. The current policy was written in a pre-independent India, where lands were allotted to aircraft owners. So if it's like having a car garage to park your car, as opposed to a garage that repaired 40 cars in a month. So almost all the major metros historically have had hangars that were owned by the people who had their own aircraft. And these prime real estate assets at major metros were never used for MRO, but for parking someone's aircraft. Well, we have no problem with parking the aircraft, but since the policy didn't exist to allot for MROs, it never happened. The only ones who were allotted at all was Air India and one organization many, many years ago called Jet Airways. Jet Airways had a hangar at Mumbai. Unfortunately, as we know, Jet is no longer operational. And then you had the historical companies that existed. And in recent times, companies like GMR built their own at Hyderabad airport, but they were never faced with this policy because it was their airport and they could very well set up their MRO. So the message to the state government is please think seriously about having land allotment. And if Chennai airport does not have it, look at putting up a secondary Chennai airport really close by. That means it makes sense to you as a business case, whether it is for international or domestic traffic, and the MROs can come there. once you've been able to sort out the most fundamental place, in Hindi, I know you guys are in Tamilnadu, we have this classic roti kapada makan. If I don't have makan, if I don't have a house, I can't do anything apart from that. The first house I need is a location at the airport. I could do MRO for component far from the airport, but again, there will be airlines who will come who will want turnaround times that are faster. So even if the MRO is done at a distance, make no mistake, the logistics base will be at the airport. And I have to have it at an international airport. Since we are in the import scheme, even today, should you do the MRO in the country, the spares will all come imported. And at some point, like I said, when our industry matures, in order to be able to handle these kind of manufacturing in country, there will be a big advantage. But I believe a lot more needs to be done. Example, in aircraft, we use a material called aluminum, which everyone says, why not? It's made here. No, the 7075 aluminum, which is one of my primary, or the 2024 6064, is not even manufactured. So even if it is an defense aircraft, no names necessary, critical to our nation, we are importing even the sheet metal. And if you think about it, it's because we don't have enough domestic industry. Nothing tells me that some of our aluminum smelters cannot make this alloy, a 7075 aluminum. But if you tell them, look, I'm going to use 20 tons a year, he's going to say, look, import it anyway. I don't need to. We need to have our own aircraft industry. I think we will evolve to that position. MRO will continue to be a very big technology demonstrator. MRO can become a major contributor to Indian economy. We're hoping that the decision taken today, as we understand by the government on the airports, will open up this issue, because they have really done a great job. First, they stopped the customs issue, the GST issue. We will still have regulatory issues, but that's an ongoing process. But now the most important thing, the airport issue, if solved today, starting tomorrow, you might see a real new boost on the MRO space. And the third type of MRO is for general aviation. And now general aviation does not need to be at major metros. General aviation could be used at non-major metros. Once again, my opinion, we do not have enough aircraft of one type except Beechcraft. And as per my understanding, in south of India, I don't even see those capabilities being used. So when you look at Mumbai and Delhi, which I think garner 90% of Indian MRO market, there is the big story about Nagpur, but Nagpur has still not become fully operational. It's still Maharashtra. I think the first opportunity I would tell young budding entrepreneurs is to look at the general aviation market for Cessna and Beechcraft, which they are a fair number and quantity operated in the southern part of the country. And smaller aircraft don't like to travel longer distances, especially turboprops. They just take that much longer. So there is a fair opportunity to look at MRO for the turboprops and the smaller aircraft. And those licenses are easily available because those manufacturers are not keen to send the planes back to the United States. Please understand, you can't send a single engine or a twin engine turboprop back to America. So you have a window to enter much more easily. In the so-called quadrangle pointed out, I am not aware of how many runways are available in that part of the country, but should they be, I would recommend that you take an opportunity to invest in MRO over there. To the state government, please keep the costs low. You will earn 100 times more from GST than from rentals. This is not a business that can afford high rental cost. But you will earn a lot more on GST because it's a business of expensive aircraft and expensive spares and expensive value, but not high cost in the initial phase. And it takes years, gentlemen, years to set up. Even if you start the brick and mortar of building and hangar today, be very sure till the second or third year, you will not get a certification. You can't get 1 rupee production or revenue, because after you build it, then you will call the regulatory agencies, let's say the DGCA, who will look at it, come back to you with suggestions, support you. You'll go back to the drawing board, make changes, come back. So for a few years, even though you spent all the money, don't expect. And then when you start going into the market, people will take time to adjust to your style, and you'll have to build your credibility because you're dealing with human life. Never forget that. Everything you do as an MRO is about air safety. Having gone that path, it'll take years before you cut a single rupee in profit. But once you're able to do it, I think you should be stable. That's all the time I have. I've timed myself. I hope I've not overextended. Thank you.
That's very well put, Bharat. I think extremely well covered. And the MRO aspects that you said is extremely relevant. That's a huge opportunity. And from HAL, we pointed that out in many reports that it's a, to use the same manpower on both on design, development, and manufacturing and into MRO is a conflict of interest. It's actually a conflict of skills as well. And this is something that needs to be separated. No industry in the world does that kind of a mix-up. And this is something we need to
Sir,
highlight
not
to the
just
government and
industry, sir. No other aircraft manufacturer is doing it. Please understand. And we don't have the best record today in terms of safety. And we have to introspect and take a hard decision. We can't keep pushing this under the rug forever. I get emotionally impacted when I hear the numbers that we get in terms of safety record that we have and others have. And nothing in this world tells me Indian engineers are any lesser than the rest of the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mr. Bharat, I just wanted to give you some information. You said that nothing of the A320 is being manufactured in India. There is a company called Dynamatics Technologies in Bangalore. That's a single source for flap track beams. So the entire A320.
Thank you for correcting, sir. I accept. Dynamatic has started.
Yeah.
Accepted. Accepted. Thank you so much for correcting. I appreciate, and my best regards to Toby, who's a good friend, and they've done great work. But in a sense, what I was trying to convey at that time, sir, is that given the scale of the aviation, what we do is insignificant. Sorry to use the word. Insignificant.
Agreed. Completely agreed. I wanted to also go back to your point that they took almost 15 years to get to the point. It didn't happen overnight. So what you said is also correct. This is a long gestation game. If you don't have it, whether it's MRO or manufacturing, the entire aerospace system is a long gestation.
True. True, sir.
Thank you.
So that's true. There is another example of that is with Tata's, who set up their aerostructures facility in Nagpur. Both the facilities are exclusively for Boeing and Airbus.
Yeah.
And it took them more than 7 years to cross the barriers and get acceptable standards to a Boeing and Airbus. But today it's 100% export, facility for them.
Correct.
So, Marshall, may I just give a little? What is being done in the Tata facility is a lot of build to print.
Yes.
We have not yet managed to deliver fundamental designed product from India to the global aviation market. I take pride as Max, we have done that at a smaller scale. We don't have the scale of Tata's or whatever. But I didn't put it out there as a boast, because while we have done it and we've done it for our own government, I think that given the skill sets we have in our nation, we should have done bloody 100 times more at least.
I agree with you. True. Absolutely.
Mr. Malkani, if I could just ask you a couple of questions as a follow-up. One is that, you talked about the difficulties in setting up this MRO. We've had about 4 or 5 greenfield airports, large greenfield airports in the large metros in the last 15, 20 years. Bangalore, Hyderabad, Mumbai, etc. You see, but was not an MRO facility part of the design of a greenfield airport? And then more and more new greenfield airports coming up. Would it not be good if the government of India could say that, any new greenfield airport that is coming up in a major city, an MRO facility should be part of the design of that?
So, Mr. Vijay, yes to both your questions. One, it was Let me explain. It was not a part of the design. It was never mandated. Yes, it should be mandated, and it is happening now. But if you take the way the greenfield airports were made, it was made with a plan to make sure that the existing airport could not exist. So we have this 150-kilometer rule, absolutely bizarre for lack of a better term. Both Hyderabad and Bangalore had these airports built by investment, and they said in order for us to recover funds, you cannot allow the existing airport to operate. Now, Hyderabad airport, why can't I set up an MRO there? Because there's no more business. There are no planes flying in. Same for HL airport. At least HL airport, I can say it's an HL airport. But this bizarre rule is absolutely unheard of in the world, that you set up a secondary airport in a primary city. And look, Hyderabad and Bangalore are tier 1 cities today in this country. They are major metros. It's no longer, the B city. It is as good as big as the Delhi, Bombays, or whatever you want to use. So the major metros, yes, greenfield airports came. There was no original design. The old airport, which could have been for MRO, was shut down. That's your answer.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Thanks very much. Yeah, it's really useful. Now we'll go on to our next panelist, Mr. Paramjit Singh. I know Mr. Paramjit Singh for many years now. Good to see you again. It's a few years since the last Defense Expo that we met. Thanks very much for accepting our invitation. I'd be grateful if you could, tell us something about your company. Mr. Paramjit Singh is the Deputy CEO of Karnataka Hybrid Micro Devices. He was earlier with Sasmos Fokker, and he has very good experience in the aerospace industry and the space industry. Over to you, Mr. Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Vijay. I hope I am clear. Can you hear me?
Very clear. Very clear. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk in front of such esteemed guests. I'm also very happy and honored to see Air Marshal Mateshwaran, whom I met a few years ago during the inauguration of some of the facilities in my old company. So here I am, sir. I am a Deputy CEO, as you indicated. I work in Karnataka Hybrid Micro Devices. So here we manufacture, we have pioneered actually the hybrid micro devices for aerospace and defense. This company was set up in 1992 by people from ISRO, basically to serve space segment. So we have capabilities to, miniaturize the existing electronics and make it suitable for harsh environment and hermetically seal, so that it can fly in space. But I'm very happy to tell you, sir, that this technology, which is basically thick film technology, can be used in many sectors, from industries, from commercial to defense, many places. It is finding so many new, although the technology is not very new. It was actually invented in 1960s. But the kind of use it has now, it's finding more and more. I'm very excited to be having this technology, and there are very few companies in India currently who are having this technology. So what we do is we are able to print circuits on ceramics. We can print circuits on steel, aluminum, or any surface you want. We can print circuits. So that's one basic thing. So we are able to print resistors, capacitors, and inductors on any surface. That's a first basic thing. Then we also can hybridize, like we can use the electronics of normal PCBs, normal components, or the surface mounted devices, and make it a hybrid circuit. So and then we can also do multi-layers. So what happens is we are able to miniaturize the whole design of the electronics, and then reduce the weight. And then because it's done with the materials like platinum, palladium, silver, the life of this is much better than the normal PCB. So the reliability we can achieve through these devices are much higher. This can also produce very basic heater like this So the heater produced using the thick film technology can go up to 800 degrees without any problem, and it won't even rust, it won't even oxidize at 800 degrees. So that's the technology. We also so this technology can also be used to produce sensors like NOx sensors, which can be used in automotive. We can also produce O2 sensors using this. We are also now working. I'm also working now to manufacture IGBTs, the isolated gate gate arrays, which is used for high power switching in electric vehicles and those kind of things. So I'm very, very excited, sir, to be part of this and then be able to serve various sectors from automotive to space. Listening to previous speakers, especially Mr. Bharat and Air Marshal Mateshwar. So listening to Mr. Bharat and Air Marshal Mateshwar, I would like to also add, the kind of difficulties I see, which some rules and possible policies which can change this scenario. I have been actually from past 5-6 years, whenever I have had a chance to speak to at CII conferences or any other conferences, I have been speaking about it. So one of the I think as it was being told that the focus has to be MSMEs. So what I see in MSMEs, what we need to do to promote MSMEs is another thing. I think we need to go further. So we look at that, the components availability, like Mr. Bharat also told about the materials, which we have also faced. In fact, Mr. Bharat, I discussed with Hindalco. I collected information all over India, whatever I could collect from what is the aerospace materials used. I discussed with Hindalco, and I could collect that there is a need of about 10,000 tons of aluminium in India per year. And they responded to me that no, they need minimum 20,000 tons before they could start production in India. So I have been very passionate about doing Make in India by myself. So what I want to suggest is that we need to look at component level, whether raw material level, that how can we encourage companies to start manufacturing components and basic raw material here, because what happens is any integrator, whether it is Mr. Bharat or any other integrator like us, we end up importing almost every component, every raw material. So our competitiveness with respect to any global player comes only in terms of our labor costs and nothing else. And then we also end up paying the freight. So although we are considered as a low-cost country, but then we actually don't end up being a low-cost country because of being in aerospace and defense, because we end up importing almost everything. So I think there has to be some policies, some focus on producing, being able to produce components, raw materials, whether in any industry, whether it is electronics. If you talk of electronics, then semiconductors, wires, connectors. If you talk of mechanical industry, then it is about aluminum, titanium, and those kind of materials. So everywhere, I think we need to focus, and that will bring a lot of impetus to the MSMEs. I also would like to bring your attention to another area which I have personally felt difficulty in passing through is on the certifications. So whether be it DGCA, be it Semilac, I find that though they have their own rules, they have the documentation, but the clarity does not exist until you have at least 10 to 15 meetings. And even at 10th meeting, you will come up with new requirements. That is where we face that, the new requirements never end, and we keep on discussing, keep on updating our documentation, and it never ends. I have met consultants, and we tried to hire consultants, and the consultants' first reaction was, why you are looking for certification from DGCA? Why don't you go to EASA and get certified? That's much easier. So I think we need to look at this, because that's how the industry feels. So whether if we of course rules have to be there, and there have to be no bypass. Everybody has to follow the basic principles of aerospace. There is nothing wrong about it, but then the clarity, the documentation from the day one would really help industry to follow those guidelines much easier, rather than being rules being transferred verbally. Document is very small, but then there are so many other rules, so many other requirements which are actually told verbally, and then and when there is a person change, then the rules change, requirements change. So that is something I think we need to really look into and then correct, because that's really actually pushes off people and then discourages people. And I have seen, I hope Mahindra Aerospace is one big example. It puts people off, and then sometimes they don't even like. I have seen in my own company, people, management taking decisions not to go for projects which requires DGCA certification. So that's what I would like to say to the if I want to say to the youngsters who are, if they are listening and they want to get into this aerospace field, I would say that the aerospace field requires knowledge, requires dedication, requires a lot of effort, because there are no ready-made talent available. You need to manage with hiring reasonable talents, and then you need to train them, you need to work with them, and that's how you grow your industry. So it is long, but of course it does give returns. Of course now, especially now, I would say, because the government policies are changing, negative list is really very good. Because earlier we used to also suffer because the demand from India, aerospace and defense demand from India, as in numbers are very low. You develop something, you develop a new system, you develop a infrastructure to manufacture, say, a new product for DRDOs or HAL or somebody, but then later your utilization of that facility is very low, and then of course there are rules that there is next after 1 year, 2 years, there is a tender again, and then you need to win that again. Even though you are the designer, you actually designed, and you hold the you are the innovator. So one more thing which reminds me now is that the rules currently, even though there have been some effort to change the rules on the make to, that industries can design, develop, qualify, and then later get into the the production phase if they are L1. But then there is no guarantee. One thing, guarantee of the purchase of the numbers, and also there are rules that once you design, let us say, I an example of just few months ago, about 4 to 5 months ago, we had an inquiry, EOI from BEL, asking to develop fiber optics gyro, and I was very much interested to develop fiber optics gyro here in India. But then it says that you develop, then after 2 years nearly, which will take about 2 years to develop and qualify, you need to go for, you need to be L1, and then after even you've become L1, you need to transfer the technology to BEL, although they would not have paid a single pie for a development, and that is what EOI says, and it is under the Make 2 program, which is surprising that how this can be asked. They asked to invest in industry, to invest, and then end of the investment, just because they purchase, say, 10 numbers, 20 numbers, the EOI says that the technology you need to transfer to BEL, and then you need to authorize BEL to use it for any purpose they want. So I mean, that definitely, then the decision internally taken was that no, we are not going for this project. I mean, we will just leave it off because it's not worth it. So I think those rules we need to look at. We need to make it more innovation friendly. MSME is one place, sir, I can say that there is a lot of investment, not of innovation can happen because they are very agile, and they can invest in the way we want. They don't have the bureaucracy of the big organizations. So a lot of innovations can happen, but then if we modify these rules to be innovation friendly, the design and development friendly, I think this will really help the new I would say innovators and entrepreneurs. So thank you, sir, for giving me this chance, and I hope I could tell you what I felt and learned through these years in my aerospace and defense.
Thanks very much, Paramjit. Just one question I want you to say. Since you are making devices both for the space sector, for the civil aerospace sector, as well as the defense aerospace sector.
Yes.
How much of your technology is with collaboration with foreign companies? How much of it is homegrown or developed by you? And if it's developed indigenously, do you invest a lot in R&D?
Sir, this, as I said, this company was established in '92. So yes, it was developed indigenously here. Of course, this technology is not innovated here, but the processes are developed here, and we are proud that we could do something very complex. Especially if, sir, recently we have supplied another lot of seismometers for Moon to ISRO. That was something I can be very proud of, that we could develop those kind of equipments here, which is MEMS based. So we have a R&D team in house, and we have developed a lot of products like this in house. And now, in fact, after I have joined here, I have big plans, as I talked about the IGBTs and others, that I'm really looking forward to invest more into R&D, and then develop new products like new sensors, and and use this base technology as being the same. I want to develop new products. Thank you for asking this question. Yeah.
You just now mentioned ISRO, Indian Space Research Organization. Now, very recently, ISRO announced that they're opening up their facilities for private companies. Do you see a lot of Indian companies making use of those facilities, and Indian companies are capable of, taking part in the space program?
I would say, sir, yes, but it will be delayed. I mean, I think that decision was very sudden. Industry, there are few big industries who are there, but I think they are still little. There is still some time. They need to understand the the nuances, and they need to actually grind themselves to be able to work for space. So it will take some time, but it's a very good step. But it will take some time, in my view, for industry to really be able to use what they have been offered.
Sure.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Very informative. Sorry.
Mr. Vijay Kumar, if I can answer that question. ISRO is, in conjunction with the Government of India, has created a new program whereby they are actually created an environment for many companies to work with, the private industries. So there is a company in Chennai, which is a startup, which I am an advisor of, Agnikul Cosmos, where they do launch vehicles for micro and nano satellites. And they are collaborating with ISRO. Similarly, there are companies out of Bangalore called Skyroot Airspace and other kind of companies. I think there are 5 companies that are startups that are working with ISRO. So I think there is a lot of light at the end of the tunnel. But like Mr. Paramjit Singh says, we don't know how long the tunnel is. So
great. Thank you. Thanks very much. I think we'll now move on to our next panelist. It's Mr. Sohail Patel, Director of Sugosha Advisory. Sugosha was one of the partners who helped SAS to produce this report on the aerospace sector, which we are releasing tomorrow. Sugosha is a very niche player in the aerospace and defense domain, and it provides complete consultancy within that sector. Mr. Patel, I'd greatly appreciate it if you could tell us, what Sugosha does and how you, and since you're being a consultancy, could you give us an answer on how you see the sector taking off in a big way?
Sure, sir. Am I audible now?
Yes, very clear.
Okay, thank you so much. Firstly, I would like to thank CCI for giving me this opportunity. Being one of the last speakers is always challenging, but I'll try to highlight some of the points which have not been raised so far. Quickly about Scotia, we are advisory in terms of anything to do with defense procurements and policies. We started with a vision of supporting MSME sector in terms of guiding them through the various policies, whether it's the DPP, now the DAP, or the DPM in terms of various procedures like licensing procedures, exports, imports, with regards to defense, guidance on offsets and offset procurements, strategic development in terms of JVs, M&As. And most importantly, we also, like you had mentioned, we are knowledge partners in various seminars and conferences, working with a lot of chambers in terms of policy perception shaping. So that in a nutshell is what Scotia does. So I'll kind of quite quickly try to highlight some of the aspects of the paper, and also while some of the speakers had already mentioned being from the industry what the challenges were, I'd like to highlight some of the positive steps that have been happening in the last couple of years. So starting with the market attractiveness in terms of the budget itself. So when we talk about the capital budget, today stands at the one which was just announced for 21-22. The capital budget for defense is about 135,000 crores. The key point to note here is while earlier the capital procurement, both the foreign and domestic, were clubbed under a single head, now the MOD has decided since last year to divide this into two heads, into domestic procurement and foreign procurement for capital acquisitions. What this does is clearly demarcate and highlight what is the domestic percentage of procurement that is happening. Since we all know and aware of the tag of being the largest importer of defense equipment, the MOD has kind of decided to do this bifurcation. So for 2021, we've had almost 58% domestic purchase from the capital budget. And now for 21-22, the target is being increased to 63% of the entire defense budget. So which means close to 72,000 crores of the capital budget will be from domestic companies. So that's just from the capital side of things. Coming to the revenue procurement, where we are, if you look at the stores and works budget of the three services, which is mainly used for the sustenance and purchase of equipment from a command level, the total from all the three forces comes up to about 48,000 crores from the revenue procurement side. So that's a significant chunk. While many people just focus on the capital, it's good to also focus on the revenue side, especially for MSMEs, to sustain the equipment which is existing in the armed forces. Coming to specifically to military aerospace, where the topic for today, if you look at the aerospace budgets for 21-22 from the overall defense budget, so it comes to close to around 34,000 crores, which is under the aircrafts and aero engines head of the Army, Navy, Air Force. So all the three services have a allocation for under aircrafts and aero engines, which obviously only caters to purchase of equipment under these two heads. So that head is about 34,000 crores, which is the actual market for purchasing new equipment under aircrafts and aero engines. And to highlight some of the programs which have already been, some of them have been shared earlier in the inaugural session. So HAL winning the contract recently for the 83 Tejas. HAL also likely to get an order for the light combat helicopter, around 15 numbers. The future programs are the 114 medium multi-role combat aircrafts, the MMRCA, the infamous program which has been on the anvil since a decade now, but hopefully things turn around in the next year or so. The 111 naval utility helicopters, which are under the SP model. This program is of great significance because it will be the strategic partnership model. The aims to develop, private industry in the likes of the DPSU. So, like we have the HAL today, the vision of the SP model is to have a similar a company in the private sector who would build end-to-end, or who will be the integrator for such platforms. Then we have the 56 medium lift transport helicopters and so on. So the entire amount again is $33 billion in terms of new equipment that the Air Force will look at in the next 5 to 10 years. Also highlighting some of the defense policy updates in terms of the recent announcements and the aero. So, like I said, there's a clear demarcation of how much percentage will be purchased from private industry, from the domestic industry, but specifically from the private industry, there has been a clear demarcation of almost 15+% of the capital budget will be procured from private sector alone. So, which is a big step. It's almost like 10,000 crores. Because when you say domestic procurement, most procurements are done through DPSUs or OFBs. But now the government has clearly demarcated a 15% for private sector as well. The conversion times, like we know, the gestation periods in terms of even just getting a contract are large, 3 to 4 years. But the government has recently announced that the A1 to contract conversion will happen within 2 years. Many projects worth 500 to 2,000 crores are going to be identified in this current year and will be tendered to the industry on a competitive basis. There is 3 major focus areas which are going to come in terms of development of technologies. That's aero engines, MRO, and critical technologies. So the government, the MOD is focusing on creating schemes for these various sectors. And when people are also talking about the first list of 101 negative items to be banned from import, the Raksha Mantri has also announced a new list which will come out in March 2021. So that is something to look forward to because they have got a lot of inputs from industries to include a lot of other areas. So that's to look forward to. There is also a fund of around 10,000 crores which is created for startups and MSMEs. This is a fund for all sectors, of course, but there's going to be a push to leverage this fund for the aerospace and defense sector. And talking about the MAKE projects, again, the defense minister has announced that 5 MAKE 1 projects will get in principle approval this year. So that is from the overall defense and aerospace perspective. And coming to Tamilnadu as a A&D hub. So Tamilnadu, like if already mentioned, is the first state to have the designation of the defense corridor, which was announced a couple of years back. And we've already got various updates on the where the status is. So while we were aware of the 3,100 crores being invested, Mr. Elongavan has already given us the update on what has happened to that 3,100. So that's good to know that we've progressed and there's already been 1,000 crores invested from that 3,100. There's also the industrial policy of Tamil Nadu, which highlights A&D as one of the sunrise industries, which complements the central policies. So when we look at the overall industries, and I think we've already highlighted the various existing DPSUs which are already in Tamil Nadu, whether it's the HVF, the engine factory, or the ordnance factory Tichy, or the Bell division of Chennai, and clubbing that with the private sector, which is also having, the likes of L&T, Ashok Leyland, Data Patterns, the Lakshmi Machine Works, and aerospace engineers. So it's a combination of public and private, and then, like we said, in defense, to go ahead, we need a public-private partnership. So I think there are all the right ingredients for Tamil Nadu to kind of leverage on the central and state policies and just move forward, push forward, and contribute towards the Make in India effort, and and get the self-reliance in aerospace sector going. So those are my thoughts on the aerospace and in Tamil Nadu. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry. Thanks very much, Mr. Patel. It was good to hear your clarifications and your positive thoughts. I will now move on to the next speaker, who's a panelist, who's Mr. Shamil Bacha, Vice President, Global Business Development of Avalon Technologies. Avalon is the fastest growing, is a company which has many segments such as sheet metal fabrication, machining, plastics related to aerospace. Mr. Bacha, could you please tell us something about your company and your activities and how you see the aerospace sector?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Vijay Kumar. I will try to give a exporter's perspective. I think we've heard a lot about the domestic markets for aerospace and defense. The opportunities and challenges were, very eloquently and very descriptively put by speakers before me. From what I've heard, it seems like export perhaps is a lot easier. We had it a lot easier, to be honest. To give you a little more understanding about our company, we are a global contract manufacturing company with operations in North America and in India. We service various domains, industrial, medical, railways, oil and gas, and of course, aerospace and defense as well. Now, how we started this journey of aerospace and defense, I'd like to tread on that a little bit and then build up some interesting experiences over the years, which perhaps might be useful for some aspiring aero vision companies. So we were basically a factory here in Chennai. Most of our sales and marketing activities were done in the US. And around 2007-8, we started getting visits from big defense contractors globally, like the Lockheed Martins and the Safrans, mainly looking at suppliers for fulfilling their offset obligations. So we didn't do much of a marketing effort, but these companies started showing up at Avalon. And we were quite surprised initially, but we got some kicks out of it. I remember along with the operations head, we called our CEO in the US and said, hey, these kind of companies are visiting us, do we have plans for aerospace and defense, So the immediate question which my CEO asked me was, hey, will you sit on an aircraft with your parts on it? As much as we are proud of all our manufacturing background and capabilities, we did take a few long seconds to say yes. And that pretty much told us our readiness for the market. We wanted to, but we realized we're not as close to where we wanted to be. But at that point, we took a deep plunge. We looked at all the markets which we are serving, and we thought as a manufacturer, the culmination of, not the pinnacle of, as a manufacturer would be serving the aero markets. So we took a plunge. We started interacting back with these big OEMs like Lockheed. Even to date, nothing much has happened to that, but in fact, that opened our eyes and we realized where we were. We made some strategic tie-ups as much as those companies found us enthusiastic, but we really didn't have a biodata or a CV with aero and defense stuff in it. So we made quite a few bold moves in our early days. We, first of all, got a consultant from the US on board, and he started, molding our vision, our thoughts, and our actions from commercial manufacturing to aerospace and defense. It was quite a shift. Like in Tamilnadu context, there's a lot of automotive suppliers, so typical parts used in automotive, similar parts like sheet metals or castings or machine parts would also be required for aerospace, but there's quite a lot of bespoke industry requirements for aero, which we had to understand and learn. And to our good fortune, we actually started off with a very complex engine part. And we decided, among all the areas, we are primarily electronics focused, but we realized the lower hanging fruits for the aero market for us was in the metal side, and specifically on the sheet metal side, where there were not so many players, especially from our region. We were guided well, and we started our journey. So we started with a very complex part. It was a aftermarket part for a Rolls-Royce Trent engine. It's a combustion liner. And it took a good part of, I guess, 2 to 3 years to develop, with a lot of help, I must say, and with a lot of support from the ecosystem available in India and the US. So once we crossed that bridge, we started having international OEMs show up, looking at India as a sourcing destination for various commodities. So having seen a complex part being made fairly well in Avalon, they got more interested in giving us more not so flight critical parts like seating, sensing, in-flight entertainment system, avionics enclosures, those kind of requirements came our way. And this market suddenly, became so exciting for us, and we decided some really bold moves. We acquired a company in Connecticut, which basically had a 35-year-old experience serving military and defense needs in the US. So this was, overnight. We were 35-year experience company. It was not just 2-year experience. And also a lot of resident institutional knowledge from that company was transitioned in a very steadfast manner to, not just the knowledge, the tools, lines transitioned to our plant here in Chennai. So it worked out well for a while. And over time, we realized it was easier to buy a company than to sustain it in the US. So we had to wind that down after 6 or 7 years. But I think our job was done to get the critical resources and knowledge into our plant here in Chennai. So we did all those steps actually gave a lot more confidence for US OEMs to look at us as a reliable and trusted partner to solve their sourcing issues and find cost-effective solutions, and in the long term look at offset some of the offset obligations to be fulfilled through us. None of that offset stuff really has come to us, although we looked at the zeros in the contracts and got excited. Nothing really has come, but what has come is a lot of other non-offset related business to us. Now,
Mr. Shamil, we're running out of time. Could you please, in a couple of minutes?
Yes, I will. Sure. So basically, we looked at more products which were interesting for the US OEMs and built a critical mass of projects to sustain the business. But, as our learnings continue on a day-to-day basis, the civil aviation market, which we thought was the most, you get long-term agreements for 10 years based on which you can plan a lot of infrastructure, a lot of resources for your company. That market today is, in fact, the opposite. So it's today, most of the OEMs are down to 25-30% of their normal consumption. So we had some hard learnings to go through in the last year, but long term, we see that as a very positive market for us, and also opens up, just hearing all the speakers before me, the opportunity in the Indian defense sector is really exciting. And I think there is space for a lot of players, a lot of special capabilities are required, a lot of efforts are needed to indigenize materials, like some of the speakers said, build on capabilities and special processes. I think it augurs well for many companies with the same vision. What I think will help is, the government, the industry bodies and SMEs all getting together and trying to make it easy for companies. We've heard the challenges. So without much further ado, I would also like to hear the other speakers. Thanks for your patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vicha. We'll actually now have a case study, which will be presented by Mr. Akshay Balal, CTO of Sabhead Automation Private Limited. Over to you, Mr. Balal. Mr. Balal?
Yeah, I'll just share my screen with you. I hope you're able to see the screen.
Yes.
Yeah,
Very clear.
good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Akshay Balal, Chief Product Officer at Fibers. Thanks to SAS partners and Seki for providing an opportunity to present our company and to showcase the state of manufacturing ecosystem in Tamil Nadu. So I'll just start with a very brief introduction about our company and what we do. So Fibers was started in 2015 with a mission to develop technologies to automate carbon fiber part manufacturing. So towards this mission, we have actually developed the fiberboard series of 3D printers. So these are the first 3D printers in Asia which are capable of 3D printing with continuous carbon fiber material. And using this technology, we can 3D print parts that are stronger than aluminum but as light as plastic. So we, as of today, provide fabrication services to our clients using this in-house machines which we have developed, and soon we'll be launching the smaller version, which is the Fiberboard 300S to the market. So also we provide a lot of end-to-end design and manufacturing services for carbon fiber drone airframes. So most of these drones which you see are 3D printed using our machines, and we are able to get a good feedback on our machines as well by providing these services. We are also working with a few government agencies and have provided them with a proof of concepts of composite parts. So we have worked with HAL's SLRDC division to convert some of the metal LRU trays into carbon fiber trays, which are right now undergoing testing at their facility. Also, we have taken up a project with HAL's AERDC division where we are taking the titanium fan blades and uh, designing a composite version of the same. Recently in the Aero India 2021, our proposal for design and development of a carbon fiber helicopter blade was accepted, and soon we'll be starting work on developing these blades for the Mi-17 helicopters. There are some of our aerospace clientele which we have. So we work with DRDO, HAL, Adani, ADA. We have provided some drone components to Tunga, Throttle Aerospace, and many other companies. So now let me just share with you some of the experiences that we have had as a startup from Chennai. As you know, Tamil Nadu is evolving to be an epicenter for hardware startups in India. So we have been able to capitalize on this ecosystem by getting our early clients in the form of the startups who are eager to test out new technologies to develop their own products. So we were able to 3D print parts for the startups, and were able to get some amazing feedback from them to improve our own machinery. So and also during our early time, we were a part of the IIT Madras incubation cell for over 2 years, and we were able to get some good industrial contacts and new clientele being a part of incubation. So that is something, and there are quite a few incubation centers across Tamil Nadu, like Forge, CETEC, which are nurturing the startups to grow into bigger companies. And moreover, due to the close proximity to some great institutes across the state, we were able to pull in some several talented engineers, interns, and technicians. So initially, when we weren't able to afford the IIT graduates, we were able to get some really good talent from PhD and university, and now we have even started conducting campus recruitment in IIT Madras. Uh, Also, since we are a hardware startup, we rely a lot on the on our vendors for several fabrication activities. So for our requirement, we were able to identify and work with some highly reliable vendors to fabricate components for our machines and also for our client projects. As our machines aid in precision manufacturing, the parts that go in a machine itself need to be very precise. So our vendors were able to meet with this uh, requirement. And also there are a lot of vendors out there who even do new age manufacturing, like metal 3D printed components. So we actually had to go and metal 3D print some of the components because a component in our process broke down, and we got a replacement in like 1 day thanks to vendors who were able to get it 3D printed. So next is it was quite easy for us to set up a vendor network and supply chain in Chennai. We were able to get most of our components, about 60% of the components that go into our machines are locally sourced. So that was something that we were able to accomplish in Chennai because Tamil Nadu already has a good infrastructure for providing to automotive companies, and most of the bearings and motors and all we were able to get very easily. Also, since we make carbon fiber parts out of our machine, we need to extensively test these parts. And again, we didn't have to go out of Tamil Nadu to get this done. We were able to get tests like environmental testing, vibrational testing, and other customized testing, both on a component level as well as a system level for our parts that we are making out of the printer for the drones. And lastly, so just wanted, so what kind of impact we as a company have on this ecosystem is, since we are getting a lot of this drone projects ourselves, we're getting some parts manufactured from our vendors, and we are sensitizing them towards aerospace standards. So we are able to make them make parts which are flight capable, and that is something which we are contributing towards the ecosystem by developing new vendors who are able to provide to aerospace standards. So yeah, thank you for your time. I hope this has been informative. Yeah.
Uh, Thank you very much, Mr. Ballard. That was a quick and very informative presentation. Thanks very much for sharing your experiences. I think this has been a very great panel discussion. We've had some fantastic experts, right from Mr. Shekhar to Mr. Malkani to Mr. Paramjit Singh, Mr. Bicha, and now Mr. Balal and Mr. Sohel Patel. I think we've gained insights from all of them into the aerospace sector. One thing is very clear: there are huge opportunities, but there are also certain bottlenecks, and and nothing comes easy. That's the message I think that is today. That the aerospace sector has massive opportunities, but we have to work hard. We have to be patient, and we have to persevere, and then the profits will come. Thank you very much. I now hand over to Mr. Sony George Matthew, the Director of SAS Partners, for his closing remarks. Thank you. Over to you, Sony. Can you hear me? Sony, can you hear me? Hello?
Sir, we are not able to hear you.
Yeah, is he able to hear us?
I guess so. He's responding.
Could you just call him?
He has to unmute.
Yeah.
So now we can hear you.
We can't hear you. Sony, we can't hear you. No, I think you'll have to log out and log in. We're still not able to hear you, Sony. Yeah. We can't hear you. We can see you, but we can't hear you. Sony, can you unmute? We can't hear you.
Sir, he's already unmuted himself, but then we are not able to hear him.
Oh.
He's on unmute only.
Okay, why don't you ask him to, Sony, could you log off and log on again?
I think he did it.
I think he's having some problems. Sony, no, I don't. I think there's some problem. Vinod, can you do the closing remarks? Unmute yourself.
No, even we are not able to
We
hear
can't hear
Vinod
you,
also.
sir. Vinod.
Sir, probably you can do the vote of thanks and then wind up the session, sir.
Fine. I hope everybody can hear me. I think it's been a wonderful session. This is our second in the series with South India Chamber and SOS partners. We've got excellent speakers right from the inaugural, from the the first session where we had very senior people from the Air Force as well as from the Tamilnadu Industries Minister and the President of South India Chamber. And again, of course, we had retired Air Marshal Mateshwaran. I think he was excellent. He really gave us a very beautiful picture of the entire industry and the opportunities that are there. And of course, the panel discussion, I felt that we had excellent panelists which really shared their experiences, their knowledge, and many of them were very inspiring, very insightful, and very informative. This is exactly what we wanted to do. And I don't think there's anybody in this who participated in this webinar will go back without learning something new. I think it's been very great. I would like to thank everybody, all the speakers, all the participants who participated in this. South India Chamber and SAS Partners is there to help you with any further information or assistance that you would like. And thank you once again. Thank you, everybody.